E aí, família? Sejam todos muito bem-vindos à Gamescom Latam 2024, a primeira edição do maior evento de games do mundo na América Latina. Meu nome é Ana XD, sou apresentadora e game influencer de esportes e cultura pop para quem quer conhecer e se divertir. E aqui hoje estou no Palco Journey 2 para trazer para vocês painéis recheados de conteúdos. Então vem com a gente que tem muita coisa boa nesse dia exclusivo para você acompanhar. Lembrando que nada disso seria possível sem a ajuda, a presença e o apoio dos nossos patrocinadores, parceiros e apoiadores. Então eu quero agradecê-los agora. Então, sob a chancela do Ministério da Cultura e da Lei de Incentivo à Cultura, a Gamescom Latam tem patrocínio do Banco do Brasil, da Sabesp e da TNT. Apoio da Essence, Boticário e Acer. Parceria B2B com a Abra Games, Associação Brasileira de Desenvolvimento de Jogos Digitais, através do projeto Brasil Games. Uma parceria com a Agência Brasileira de Promoção de Exportações e Investimentos, Apex Brasil. Realização Omelete & Co, Quilmess, Game, Gamescom Latam, SP Cine, Secretaria de Desenvolvimento Econômico e Trabalho da cidade de São Paulo, a Associação Paulista dos Amigos da Arte, Secretaria da Cultura, Economia e Indústrias Criativas de São Paulo. Lei Paulo Gustavo. Ministério da Cultura, Ministério do Desenvolvimento, Indústria, Comércio e Serviços e Governo Federal. Novos patrocinadores e apoiadores serão divulgados em breve. Então, fiquem ligados. Muito obrigada pela presença de todos vocês. Lembrando que alguns dos painéis aqui no Palco Journey 2 serão feitos em inglês. Então, se vocês precisarem, podem usar o canal de tradução simultânea no fone de vocês. E com isso, todos os preparamentos e recados dados, vamos então iniciar a nossa primeira palestra, o nosso primeiro painel aqui no Palco Journey 2, que será a final de uma premiação da Brasil Direct. Então a gente vai começar recebendo eles daqui a pouco no palco, mas eu quero lembrá-los que é uma premiação que reconhece os melhores jogos brasileiros lançados, que serão lançados este ano. Então todos os 5 finalistas que vocês vão conhecer aqui, passaram assim por uma concorrência bem difícil para estar aqui, ou seja, eles são muito bons, são os melhores que estão aqui agora como finalistas para participar desse painel com a gente. Então agora eles vão se enfrentar aqui junto com vocês numa concorrência pesada, disputando quem será o escolhido a melhor pitch da Brasil Direct 2024. Lembrando que a premiação é organizada pela Federação dos Regionais em parceria com a Gamescom Latam, com a Abra Games e a Indie Hero. Então, por favor, vamos receber primeiro o nosso moderador, Pedro Zambon, da Save Game. Por favor, Pedro. Olá. Olha aí, tudo bem, Pedro? Pode sentar aqui que essa cadeirinha do lado é sua. Mas, como eu sei que o Pedro não estará sozinho, quero chamar também os nossos convidados que serão jurados aqui junto com o Pedro, com todos esses finalistas que agora vocês conseguem ver no nosso telão, tá? Então, por favor, pode entrar o Facundo Mounes. Por favor, palmas aí para o Facundo. Cadê o Facundo? O Pedro está olhando, vocês estão vendo, né? Olá. O moderador é assim, né? Tem que moderar tudo, até inclusive a entrada dos convidados. Se eles estão ali conversando, tem muita gente lá, né? Os finalistas, tudo. Aí eles já vão batendo um papo. Ah, já veio também a nossa querida segunda jurada. Então, por favor, palmas aqui para Odil Limpar, da Spiel Frabic. Muito obrigada, Pedro. O palco é de vocês, então manda bala que eu vou estar assistindo, tá bom? Boa premiação, gente.
Maravilhoso. Todos me ouvindo, todos aqui, entusiasmados para o início oficial que abre aqui a Gamescom Latam com esse pitch das associações regionais, né, do Brasil Direct. Vou mudar para inglês, porque temos jurados internacionais e também porque a gente tem convidados internacionais aqui no evento. Tá me falhando um pouquinho. Convidados internacionais aqui no evento, então, a partir de agora, né, mudando de língua. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really, really happy to be here this year. Hello. Okay, it's going on because I don't listen in my own voice, but I'll keep going. Well, I'll take it out because it's making me confused and another voice in my head. Okay, so the idea here, as it was said, it's a pitch competition from 5 of the best games of all over Brazil. These incredible games will be evaluated here by our guests, Facundo Mounis from Imagine Campus. He's the guy from Argentina who knows everything about the games industry, running a game incubation program in there. And as the same, Odile Limpec from Spielfabrik, also managing a game acceleration program in Europe and several other projects to enlightening this session today. But more than that, we have these games to be presented. So I will not take in more of your time. Let's invite the first pitch presentation. And what is a pitch presentation for those who doesn't know about what is a pitch? It's basically a 5-minute presentation to show you and convince you how good, how interesting, how amazing is this game for investment, for marketing, and for making this game go to the successful future. So let's go to the pitch. First one to present will be Italo from Trial Forge Studio, is right? Okay, Italo. Okay. Let's wait your slides.
Hello, everyone. So I'm not sure how this is going to start, but I was expecting to have my presentation, and before that, a trailer from the game. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Now I need my presentation, please. Can't you hear me? Hello? No? Nothing? A apresentação chegou. Hello? No, no? Não, não ouço. Agora eu estou me ouvindo. Vocês podem me ouvir? Legal. If anyone needs to listen in Portuguese, you need to use channel 3. Se alguém precisar me ouvir em português, canal 3. Se vocês quiserem ouvir em inglês, canal 4. If you need to hear in English, please channel 4.
For the original, 3 for Portuguese.
You can hear me, right? Okay.
Go on.
Nice. So, nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Italo Niewiński. I'm founder of Trial Forge Studio and director of Deathbound. So, when I decided to do this speech, I wanted to tell you the story of this Souls-like game that was made by 2 people, Deathbound. But let me explain better. Despite not having the resources to make something big, we dared to try. And although we knew it was very difficult to achieve, we accepted the challenge and tried to do the best we can. Because we are trial-forged studio. We want to make challenges, to deliver challenges to those who really want to have those challenges. So if you love challenge, we love as well. So this is what we want for you. So there's different ways to make a game with 2 people. We choose our own path. We chose to grow, to make partnerships, to build something credible and plural. So just like in Deathbound, the few become the many, and the many has the power to achieve greater things. In our journey of 7 years, we built a lot of partnerships. And in these partnerships, we found ways to better things. So with these partnerships, the word of Deathbound grew. And now we have something that we can call our art, in the broadest sense of the word. So let's talk about Deathbound. Deathbound is an action RPG where you can transform in other characters to make combos and fight gruesome creatures and bash them in combat. The world of Deathbound is rich and full of history that we tell through the memories of the characters we go and absorb throughout the game. The characters that you have, they are all the same body, and want to, even if they are different sides of this story, they have some conflicts between them. And with those conflicts, we can have some gameplay consequences. For example, you can have buffs and debuffs if the characters don't like each other. And the game takes place in a techno-medieval setting, which means that we have a medieval people that is walking through the ruins of a technological civilization. And the game starts with a crusade of the faithful of death, of goddess Death, trying to invade this city to prevent the heretics to create experiments to achieve eternal life. So we want also to include the Brazilian flavor to Deathbound. So as Brazil has a lot of cultural and ethic diverse, so we want to put diversity also in those characters. So we have characters with many diversity, and they are also we have some balance between male and female characters. And to top it off, we have a capoeira fighter, which represents a lot of our culture. So this is being caught the attention of a lot of Brazilian players because capoeira really represents our own culture. And another thing we did in terms of bring Brazil to Deathbound, we have this football stadium where part of the game takes place. So this is based on Brazilian football stadium, and this is really something very Brazilian to us. So football is something that's very rooted in our culture. So we brought it to Deathbound as well. Now we are close to launch, and we've been reaching audience. So we already have more than 4 million people reached by Deathbound. You've been also published in a lot of the mainstream game media. And also, we had the opportunity to see our game played by great YouTubers and streamers, which is improving our reach and make us very happy to see how players are enjoying the adventures of Deathbound. So this is Deathbound, and now we are here today to present the results of this journey we've been through. And I really want to thank you, because now we want to build new partnerships to make sure that Deathbound is a sales success, and also make sure that Trialforge can keep doing games. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Italo. It was amazing. Well, wishlist now. Find this game. It's an amazing game. Thank you for your presentation. And now, I need to hear the prompt, the next one who'll be in the stage. I don't remember exactly who it was. They told me that, well, come the next one. Okay, Mad Mimic with no heroes here too. Please join the stage with us. That's the power. And here.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thank you for being here. I'm Luis Sampaio. I will talk about No Heroes Here too. And I'm one of the founders and lead game designer at Mad Mimic. So, what is No Heroes Here 2? No Heroes Here 2 is a co-op tower defense party game with roguelike features. You play with up to 4 players to defend your castles against hordes of enemies. And you have to survive through 15 rounds of this mayhem. The game is both local and online multiplayer. I will now show a quick video about the game. Let's see if it plays. Yeah. So, what makes No Heroes 2 the game we wanted to make? The first thing about the game is we want the players to be able to customize their run. The game has up to 3 kingdoms with unique mechanics. We have 30+ castles with unique challenges and level mechanics. And we have up to 8 different weapons, each weapon having its own features and crafting processes. So the idea is, depending on the kingdom, depending on the castle, the weapon you choose, you're going to be able to have an easier run, a tougher run, or a different experience. Also, another thing we love about the game is that you can expand your castle. What I mean by that? At the end of each round, through this 15-round run, you can buy items, and these items can upgrade your crafting processes, or you can have like level mechanics such as portals, that makes easier to traverse through the level. And we also have features that allows you to automate our whole production. So for each run, you can change a lot the way you play. And lastly, you have the idea of surviving the mayhem. You have these 15 rounds of the game. They change how the enemy works, they disrupt your production processes, or they work around the kingdom mechanics. All of this makes that each run is unique on its way, because it's really, really rare to be able to have all things together for more than once. For the business and competitive analysis, the idea is that No Heroes 2 is a premium model game with digital distribution. We are aiming for the price to be $19.99, and we want to have this value for all main platforms, PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. And one of the strongest things about the game is its high replayability. The game is going to be ready for PC at the end of July. And the consoles, we are going to be ready until the end of September. So the release is going to be through October. With this collaboration, we, as Mad Mimic, bring our game development skills. While on these creations, they bring their audio and composing expertise, as well their relationship with the Jovem Nerd. What this means? This means that we have access to a huge community of gamers, as well as a group of critics that can help us to develop it further, our games, and increase the quality of our products. So that's it. Thank you very much.
We have the third one with a dark crown for Hyperdrive Game Studio. Please join us. Dark Crown. Hello. Okay. The power with you. I will count the time, and that's your stage.
Sorry? Oh, this one's not working. Okay. Hey, can you hear me? All right. So hi there, everyone. My name is Lucas, and I'm from Hyperdrive Studio, an indie team from. So in Dark Crown, you are the king of a land drawn in shadows by the awakening of an ancient evil. You have to gather your army and powerful curses to fight off the hordes of darkness and reclaim your kingdom. So we have prepared a quick teaser trailer for you guys.
The crown weighs heavy. It took so much from me. But not even that thing is going to keep me from claiming what's mine.
So Dark Crown is a roguelike deck builder. It's a dynamic new take on chess, enhanced by powerful magical abilities. It's a gloomy and oppressive world, but one that you conquer by unlocking new cards, improving units, making hard choices and sacrifices along the way to grow more powerful with every new run. But in a sea of roguelikes, what makes Dark Crown stand out? Well, first of all, we're reimagining chess, an all-time faster, puncher, and bringing a systemic focus to the gameplay. We'll create endless opportunities for synergies between magics, movements, and environments. So lightning can propagate in a puddle, water and fire can create steam that blinds the enemy. So the player is going to be able to experiment with a vast deck of effects that change the experience every time. And not only the player is going to be creating his own deck of cards, but also building up and upgrading an army of soldiers with all their different quirks, buffs, and debuffs, adding another layer of depth and replayability. And in the short time we have shown Dark Crown, our game was selected to be featured at the Latin American Games Showcase during Summer Game Fest. And within these first 2 weeks since we have launched our Steam page, we have already amounted for almost 5,000 wishlists. And we know that that's just a start, but now that we're working on our demo, that you can take a look on our Discord channel, by the way, we'll be able to showcase the game more and start to put it in the hands of players. And we know there's a great appetite for games that share similarities with Dark Crown. Turn-based strategy games, fantasy themes, mechanics, and deck building. And we believe that Dark Crown can be appealing to those players, fitting to a spot of familiarity, but also bring innovations to the genre. And to make this happen, we're going to be investing 18 months and $400,000 on our full production. That we already invested $50,000. With that, we're able to create about 20 plus hours of content by late 2025, early 2026 for PC and Steam, but it's also by late 2025, early 2026 for PC and Steam, but it's also a game that you can later port to consoles and even mobile. And by we, I mean our agile team of 2 programmers, 1 game designer, and 1 artist. We're also collaborating with Radioactiva Game Sounds for this project and looking to expand with 3 new positions during development. And over our 7 years as a full-time studio, we have partnered with mobile publishers releasing a game with over 150 million downloads. And Radioactiva has extensive experience working with AAA projects. So we're off to a great start to make a product that can reach a huge audience with depth and quality. And to amplify that, we are looking for a publisher that can help us on funding, marketing, and with regular feedbacks. We truly believe we'll be able to make the best product if you combine our creative output with the constant feedbacks of a publisher, giving us this outside perspective. And also to reach out to as many players as possible, we're going to be needing help on localization and later porting. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this sneak peek into Dark Crown. You can wishlist our game via the QR code. And here's my contact info if you guys like to reach out and talk some more later. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. The third pitch of the day. And now, for the fourth one, now I have the names. Guilherme Heckel from Mr. Dev Studio. Please join us.
All right. You hear me? All right? You can hear me? All right. So everyone, nice to meet you all. My name is Guilherme Heckel. I am game developer from Mr. Dev Studio. I'm here to introduce myself, my company, and the project that we have been working on, called Orla. But first, I would love you to show you a trailer.
Confront your traumas from the war while investigating a haunted house. Orla is a 3D first-person horror game where we play as Moacir Gonçalo, a private detective who needs to discover the mysteries from his past and the secrets of his case. Moacir is haunted by spirits of death, explosions, mutilation, and despair. Play this psychological thriller involving the mind of a war veteran, surpassing the malignant entity that tries to drive him into madness, called Orla. Solve puzzles, interact, and explore rooms that will defy your view of reality. The environment is a living creature trying to kill Moacir with traps and challenges. Adventure yourself in this unique story with unusual graphic style and dark gothic visuals. Orla will launch for PC and consoles.
All right. Can I get back to the presentation? All right. For Orla, you could say we took some main inspirations for the game, but we also see them as our selling points. For the game, we took inspirations from other horror games on the market, like Layers of Fear, Visage, Amnesia, where you play a traditional first-person 3D horror game. And from the visuals, we took a different approach. Instead of making a realistic game like others, we create this unique visual style similar to the work of the artist Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, where you can see that dark, cartoonish visual style. And from the story, we took inspiration from horror movies from the 90s, but specifically on Jacob's Ladder. It's a story about a war veteran who suffers from PTSD, and he has to live with his trauma and survive. As I mentioned before, you play as Moacir Gonçalo, a private detective who needs to investigate this old mysterious house hired by his client. And conform you are playing in exploring environments, solving puzzles, and progressing through the story, you are discovering the story of Moacir and who is this mysterious old entity called Orla. We are exposing our game in some indie games festival, like Latin America Game Showcase, Mini Indie Showcase, and AK3. And as well, for SB Games, we are getting great visibility. We are getting some numbers for marketing as well, and collecting some feedbacks from players and what the horror gameplay audience want to see on their game. Right now, for the development, we are seeking a partnership who can help us with funding. And we are seeking a funding total of $107,000, helping with marketing, localization, and porting for consoles. Right now, we are on the demo stage, and we have estimated total development time of 14 months, and separate content from the chapters as well through the development. From the market, we took some research from other games of the genre, and see how much they perform, and see how we can get some scenarios of how our game can perform. In this way, we see a potential to sell our game for a price tag of $14.99, with a campaign estimate of 5 hours of gameplay, and launch this game for PC, console, as well for many platforms. And who are us? Who are Mr. Dev Studio? So, Mr. Dev Studio, we are an indie studio from Brazil. We have been working on the game market since 2016. We work mainly as an outsourcing provider, but also developing our own projects. We have a total of 4 projects just published, mostly for mobile, like educational games and like games for Roblox and etc. And in our team, we have a great expertise with professionals for developing games and cinema as well, people who can create great storytelling and great projects. And we have working with a lot of companies through Brazil and many other countries. So this is Orla, this is us. Thank you for your time, and hope to see you at Gamescom and play our game at the Abra Games booth. Thank you again.
That's amazing. Thank you. We have this last but not least thing that we need to talk in the last pitch. So, Eliandro, join us to conclude this sequence of amazing pitch presentation with Plus Plus Studio. Here's the power.
Hello, everyone. It would be nice if we could start showing the trailer. The game trailer.
Guia meus passos.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Eli, and I am here to present to you the game Uwe. Uwe comes from the word from the Guarani people that means land, earth, or territory. It's a central aspect of our game. Uwe is a auto battler game with combat based on the rolling and customization of dice. Each character is represented by a 6-faced dice, and the player can choose and customize each face of this die. When it's the time to the character to act, the dice is rolled, and the ability that comes face up is the ability that the character will use. The game tells the story of the Earth's Hand people and their fight of resistance against the colonial invaders, the White Cloaks. And all of the game is based on the history of the colonization of Brazil, especially in the 16th century. As our unique selling points, primarily we have our dice builder mechanics. The game is a auto battler, and all of the characters are represented by these dice. So customizing, creating, and discovering new dice is a major point of our game. As the game progresses, the player will receive more and more faces and more dice, and we'll be able to create the characters' builds based on this dice crafting mechanic. We also have auto battler features, but we are introducing an active skill mechanic. So even though the characters fight automatically, the player can still interfere in the fight via these active skills. And lastly, we have a very unique team. All the team is based on the great culture of the indigenous people of Brazil. We have great art, great history, great music, but these histories are not yet being told by the video game industry. So we are trying to bring a shining light to that. We also have a point that the game is a great entry to the genre. We know that auto battlers is kind of niche, but we think that the Uwe is a great point of entry to the genre. We have roguelike replayability, and also the game is very easily recognizable. So for our business model, we are aiming at premium, starting at $14.99, releasing primarily on PC and then expanded to consoles and mobile. Our tags are auto battler, roguelike, strategy, and midcore. And our major reference is Loop Hero, primarily because it also is a strategic game with structure based on chapters with storytelling, and also combines the auto battler with the strategic elements. Slay Spire was a great reference for us by the especially by the roguelite elements, And also, dice dungeons really proved to us that combining the randomness of dice with dice building and character building can be really, really fun. So this is our roadmap. We have, I think, like 10 months to a year of production yet, but things are going very well. And we're looking for partners. We do not need funding, but we're looking for localization, marketing, porting expertise, support for festival specialists and the international ones, and also QA. This is our amazing team. The team is pouring so much of their souls in the game, and it's very representative, a very diverse team with some indigenous representations on it. And we really hope that we can bring this message forward to our players. So this is Ewe, and thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, Eliandro. And, well, in fact, I really want to invite all the presenters back into the stage, because now, yeah, please, invite everyone, come back to the stage. I think, well, everyone here on the stage. We have these 5 great, please. Okay, we have one presenter that is without the feedback, but please, everyone, let's wait the last one because I don't want to give the round of applause without all the presenters here. Well, let's see. Well, let's continue here. We have these amazing pitches, and I think you like it. Okay, now we have it, please. Now everyone here in front of us. And I want an amazing, huge round of applause for these pitch presentations. Guys, it's not easy to present in front of a stage in English with all these eyeballs looking to you, to your game, to this jury. So you already made a huge thing here, but also you made a huge thing with these amazing games because a lot of local cultural references, unique mechanics, innovation. It's something that the industry do not have every place. So thank you all. And now I do not have the feedback of the time here, but we have a couple of minutes to have a round of questions for the jury. So I think it will be best for you to sit down here, and then they can address the questions for each one of the games. I invite you to the stage, answer the question, and I will have some information from the organizers where is the time to stop. Who wants to start to make the first question for the heroes here, presented the pitches? And, of course, a general feedback, too.
Okay. Thank you very much. So first of all, congratulations to all 5 because it's really high quality pitch, and I see a lot of pitches. You speak freely, you look at everybody, so the very simple things, you really did it very well. So very congratulations. I have, of course, I took a lot of notes. I'm happy to share with them also later on everything, but for the sake of time, just one remark for the first one from Dev Palm. You spoke a lot about cooperation. But you didn't really tell us at the end what you did exactly. What is your strength? Because you said you developed it with a lot of people. So I loved to start saying, hey, we are 2 and we did this perfect, very good game. So I think it's a very good start. Like you make people curious because it looks amazing and you're only 2. But then you say we work with all of these people and I didn't really understand what are you doing there and what are the other ones going.
So thank you for the question. So we started as 2, but we built a team throughout this whole journey. So now we are more than 15 people working at the studio, thanks to partnerships we did to receive funding and all the things we had to do to make everyone work together. And also we had some other companies that help us. But we have now a team of more than 15 people working on this game and putting it in the market. So it starts as two, but instead of trying to do only between us, we decided to bring more people and look for funding, which was very hard. But we get there and we build the team and build other partnerships for the other parts we needed.
Thank you.
I want don't go. I want to add that one thing I didn't understand is what you really need regarding funding and how far for completion of the game. Maybe I don't catch that in the presentation.
What do I need right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so DevBound is ready to the market. We have a publisher. So
okay.
this is ready for DevBound, but we want partnerships to help sell the game if you find anything that can help us in the market. But also we are looking for partnerships so we can keep the studio alive, and we need to for future projects. So these are things that we're looking for now in our story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the next one, no heroes here. I think I don't have much question because you had a lot of information. I have only one. You didn't tell us a lot about your community building, which I think is very important to launch the game. And more information on that would be nice, I think.
Okay, yeah, so for the community building, we already have started a community when we released our previous games. Since from No Heroes Here 1, but mostly with NDAs, our latest release. And we've been working around a lot with influencers, and now with Jovem Nerd. They are one of the biggest platforms in Brazil regarding gaming community. So we plan to use this partnership with Nonsense Creations to work around and be able to catch more, mostly for Brazilian, but the later international community.
So just one more on this. I think it's really great what we are doing. Your pitch was almost too modest. You could brag a bit more.
Yeah, I was about to say the same. I have here like a kind of weak selling. Like in the middle are like, we have some issues in the game, and it's like, I don't know, why is like that?
I don't know, I think I was just nervous. But thanks.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I want to go to with that crown. I like the you put animations into the presentation. That's very good. It was right into the point, and the say was good. But I lost some things in the middle. I don't have any questions. More like feedback. But it's like it was too fast in some regards. So it was because you were nervous, or is how you I don't know.
You mean the presentation was fast?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we're trying to put a lot of information under 5 minutes, so that's a lot of pressure also, but I think I have a tendency of speaking fast. So, but yeah, we will love to have more time to share more details with, more time also.
I have also it was very well structured, so everything very clear. When you get feedback about pitches, we never agree about everything. So I like the gifts, but I don't like them when it's always the same. I'm looking at some point, it's getting me a bit dizzy. Like I'm not sure what to look at. But it's a very minor comment, I must say.
Thank you.
And a very good point is the QR code at the end. It's such an easy tool to have a couple more of wish list when you present. So well done.
Thank you very much. And we shall start our game via the QR code. Thank you.
Any more comments? We need to finish.
Okay.
Maybe we'll need to wrap up and finish because the time is running over, but all these notes will be afterwards sent for you all as a feedback. And of course, then the jury will talk with each other and deliberate the best pitch for the prize of the Brazil Direct this year. Remembering that Brazil Direct is an initiative that was born by the combination and collaboration between the local game associations here in Brazil. We have, I think, 17 collectives, something like this. 18. Okay, we have 18 game associations and collectives from all over the states in Brazil, from the south to the north. And these regional associations, they applied several games for being selected for these 5 finalists being here in the Gamescom Latam stage to show you a little bit of our Brazilian talent. First of all, thank you, Odile. Thank you, Facundo. It was amazing. Thanks for the collaboration here with the jury. And again, thank you for all of you that presented the pitches. It was great. You really represented the value and the talent of our game industry. So we have this first activity here from this amazing week for the games industry in Brazil, for the Latin American games industry. So join the activities. Thank you all. See you around, and goodbye.
Hello. Okay, thank you. I will now change, I will speak Portuguese, so now you can change to the channel 3 if you want to hear me as my real me. Até esclarecendo para vocês, o canal 3 aqui do Palco Journey 2 vai estar sempre em português. E o canal 4 estará sempre em inglês. Então, se o painel estiver acontecendo em inglês e você quiser ouvir o áudio original, você muda para o canal 4. Se estiver em português e você quiser ouvir o canal original, você muda para o canal 3. Então, canal 3, sempre em português do Brasil. Canal 4, sempre em inglês, aqui na linguagem original que estiver rolando os painéis. E vocês vão precisar saber dessa informação, porque o próximo painel será em inglês e a gente vai falar sobre jogos AAA, a Co-Dev com esse tipo de jogos. E vai ser uma continuidade, né, desse papo que nós estamos tendo aqui, que é muito importante, principalmente considerando a junção da Gamescom Latam, da Gamescom, na verdade, com o Big Festival, que criou-se, então, a Gamescom Latam, que, querendo ou não, tem essa veia de poder apoiar e apresentar para vocês esses jogos brasileiros independentes e a gente poder aprender sobre toda essa indústria. Então, vamos continuar esse papo mesmo, dando sequência. Aqui a gente vai debater, então, sobre a terceirização de certas partes da produção de games AAA, avaliando os benefícios e riscos envolvidos. Então, eu já avisei para vocês que o painel será em inglês e vou pedir primeiro para o pessoal trazer o púlpito, que eu sei que o nosso panelista pediu para que entrasse. Então, nosso púlpito, por favor, palmas para o púlpito. Ou para o moço da produção, pelo menos, que está trazendo o púlpito. Muito bem, pode pôr ali na frente. Entendeu que a gente está? A gente tem que, né? Isso. Não, um pouquinho mais para frente. Acho que... O que vocês acham aí? O que vocês acham? Tá bom? Tá? Então tá. Então é isso. Então aqui, com o púlpito preparado, eu quero chamar para o nosso Palco Journey 2 o Harish Rao. Por favor, palmas para ele, que ele está vindo, ele está aqui. Ah, poxa, então vou contar de novo, vai. 3, 2, 1. Aê, agora sim! Welcome, Harish. Oh, aqui. Harish.
Thank you.
Opa.
Is it on?
I think so. Yes.
Hello? Can you all hear
Yes,
me?
it is on.
Okay.
Yes, everybody is listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. It's my first time here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So I'm having a wonderful time. This is fantastic. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Sony PlayStation and what we do. My name is Harish Rao. I am the manager of concept art and outsource for PlayStation Visual Arts. So if you haven't heard of me, you probably will hear of me if you ever make games for PlayStation, because we touch all the games for all the studios. So here's my little deck. I'll kind of go through it, and maybe I'll have some Q&A at the very end, okay? So who is Sony PlayStation? This is Sony PlayStation. So you probably recognize some of the companies that are actually up here. My department, which is called Visual Arts, actually touches all of these departments, meaning that the team that I work with usually works with all of these companies. So you can kind of see them. You probably have played some of these games. You probably have heard of these companies that have played these games or that make these games. I won't go into too much detail. You probably already know most of these companies. All right, so what is outsourcing? And a lot of companies here, I know I've been speaking to various companies over the course of the last couple of years that want to get into AAA outsourcing. And so what does that actually mean? It's a little bit different than working in PC and mobile games because there's a lot more that's at stake, as well as there's a lot more in terms of what you need to know, which I'll be going in my presentation about. But I wanted to show this briefly of exactly kind of what we do in our outsourcing approach. And you'll see a lot of applications that are up here. So you'll see things like ShotGrid, Jira, Photoshop, Miro. A good friend of mine who if you haven't heard, or you should probably attend his talk, called Promethean AI. Andrew Maximoff is actually on a panel later on this particular conference. We work with them very directly. They're integrated in our process as well. Maya, obviously ZBrush. These are some of the tools that we use on the art side of things. And then we also use Perforce. And why am I showing you this slide? The reason why I'm showing this to you is if you are an actual art outsourcing company that wants to get into AAA gaming, and you want to explore this as an actual part of your pathway, as your career, then it's really important to actually invest in a lot of tools and security, which I'll get into as the crux of my actual presentation. And here's a pipeline. I had my now OS supervisor actually put this together. This actually gives you a really good diagram of exactly the art production process and how it actually works throughout the whole ecosystem. So you can kind of see here on the left side we have the dev team. So we have a project, it gets greenlit, it gets approved. We go and my department sits in the middle sometimes. We don't work with every single game, but when we do, we actually come in and we actually assist all the outsourcing companies. So it's really important to understand that. My department has been around for a lot longer than I've been there. I've been there for 3 years. But it's been around for quite a long time. And we help with the project setup. We help with the documentation tools. We sometimes do concept. Obviously, I'm a manager of concept as well. And then we then kind of help the developers with getting the actual game into the hands of the vendors. That's what where you guys come in. So a lot of the vendors that come in with all the creative services, that might be concept art, that might be AAA assets in art production, might be animation, all these kinds of different disciplines. Then it comes back in, and once you actually hand it off, either goes directly to the client, or we might come in the middle of it to actually help with the quality control and the integration into the games. This part here at the bottom, where we actually have here, where it says quality control and integration of the game engine, this is probably the most important part that you need to understand when working in AAA console gaming, because this is the critical component of what makes you successful as an outsourcing company working for someone like Sony PlayStation, or let's say a Microsoft or Nintendo. This is the actual part of the ecosystem that's the most important. The other part that's really important to understand, and this is something that is the crux of my talk, is really about InfoSec and security. So you may have heard this term, you may not have heard this term, but it's very important for you to understand that InfoSec and security is really a critical part of actually becoming a AAA game art outsourcing vendor. And what that means is you may or may not have actually invested in any security protocols, but for Sony PlayStation, it's critically important because one of the first things that you do when you actually get onboarded and working in an actual game is we have to go through something called InfoSec. And that InfoSec process means you're going to go through an entire questionnaire of a security detail. That security detail is very extensive, and they actually ask you a bunch of questions about how secure your internal systems are, how secure your artists are in terms of working on their machines. If you're working in a remote environment or central in the studio, it's very important to pass all these security measures. And you can kind of see here on this slide, we have kind of like, it's kind of this kind of Venn diagram of we're protecting the company secrets. We have the customer and employee, PI, and intellectual property. So these are basically the three areas why we are very bullish about making sure InfoSec security is actually very important, and it's very critically used by vendors. Because if you don't do it, then you won't get through the security process, and it doesn't matter if you got approval to actually join the project. It'll take you a longer time to actually get onboarded, or in some cases, you might not actually be able to go further into the project itself. So I'll probably ask some questions at the end about this, but this is the key component. And the last thing I'll say about this is InfoSec security is so important when you're actually doing AAA gaming work, because what ends up happening is it costs. There's a cost factor. And so a lot of people don't think about that. You know, a lot of people think about like, well, I've got this great portfolio, I've got this great team. Maybe you've been doing PC and mobile game art, and you want to take the leap into AAA. That's great. The thing is that when you actually decide to make that leap, you have to invest in InfoSec security, because all of these publishers all are very guarded against the top corner up here, the company secrets that get out. And so that those company secrets are very, very important. You probably have heard in the news, I don't have to tell you about it, there's been a lot of data breaches and things. Every time a data breach happens, it means that InfoSec security gets even more tight when it comes to actually passing people through the vendor process. And then, this is my contact information. A lot of people have actually asked, they've reached out to me on the platform to set up meetings. I wanted to showcase this particular presentation first and let everybody know about what is all involved with art outsourcing. And so you can reach out to me. Please come and talk to me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you if you're actually serious and you want to get into game outsourcing, especially with Sony PlayStation. Happy to give you my information, my contact, talk about those requirements. It's very important that you understand these parts of the actual business before you get started. So I just wanted to kind of share that. That's my information. You can take a picture of it, come to me, and grab my business card afterwards. But I'm happy to have a short Q&A if anybody has any questions. I'm not hearing. Not sure if Sounds good, yeah. So the question is, regarding InfoSec, how do we deal with remote studios? Or I believe like studios that have remote workers as well. This is a very important part. If you have remote workers that are not working in a centralized studio, there are actual security protocols that are actually more stringent involved with those artists. Their laptops have to have USB blockers. They have to go to have security measures on their laptops. They cannot be working on a personal computer and working on a Sony project. So you'll have to invest into that as well. This is a very important, critical part of how InfoSec security works. So it's not like you can just like have workers that are working outside. You get the project, for example, and you just put the build on their actual machine. Before the build will actually go into anyone's machine, especially they're remote, that actual machine has to be completely secured. And so that's part of the InfoSec questionnaire and the process that you'll actually get these questions about. Hello. Okay, yeah, sounds good. So the question is there some sort of global certification that can actually be applied for that would apply to all the studios? I can't speak to the other studios. I know that there is something, someone had told me that like some of this, I think Amazon might publish something like that, but every studio is different. One thing that I'll just basically say is Sony PlayStation's InfoSec security is much different than anybody else's. Just because you might have passed like Microsoft or let's say Amazon Game Studios does not mean you'll automatically pass on Sony PlayStation. Sony, just to give you an idea, Sony PlayStation gives you an actual 15-slide presentation with questions. And they're basically asking questions for security risks. And they do an entire evaluation. And at the end of that evaluation, they come back and they'll actually give you low risk, medium risk, high risk report. And the high risks are the ones that have to be addressed. So if you've done actual certification at another studio, let's say like Microsoft or Amazon or Nintendo, that's really good. That means that you've actually gone through that process. That is not a guarantee for every single publisher, and Sony has its own. But once you actually go through certification, I will say this, once you go through certification, you get approved. We have different tiers of certification. So we have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I won't go to the details right now, but let's just say we'll take tier 1. Tier 1 is when you actually work with engines. So that's actually almost co-development with an actual primary studio where you're working in their engine. That's the highest tier level of actual security clearance. If you get that, that's good for everything. And once you pass, it's a 3-year certification. So for 3 years, you can actually work with any studio inside of Sony. Sounds good. I will do that. Thank you. So the question is, wanting to understand about the art process. What do we need to know for the art portfolios? So that's a good question. I'm certainly the right person to ask because I get a lot of those questions. I get probably about, I don't know, on an average week, maybe 20 to 30 emails or a week from various studios. There's two things that I would actually say when you're actually trying to break into the Sony PlayStation kind of ecosystem or the family. It's really important to go to conferences like this or to actually befriend people within Sony. Because the thing that's really challenging is for new studios to actually get on board and get a project, there are, like for every new studio, there's already an existing 10 studios that have already worked with those Sony studios. So just like anything else, a lot of the Sony studios prefer to work with people they've actually already worked with because they already have the history. They understand what their actual strengths are and that kind of a thing. So I know this is a question about portfolios. So portfolios, I mean, maybe other studios will say a different answer. My answer is going to be like, my team looks for very specific things. We try to find things that are very similar to other games that have been published. So like on Sony platform, but not just, you know, relegated to Sony. As long as they're AAA games that have actually come out that have done really well and they have very similar looks and feels. The one thing I'll actually also say, because this is an important thing I want to mention, is a lot of times new vendors come in and they think they're going to come in and work on like the hero characters. I don't mean to burst your bubble, but you're probably not going to work on hero characters when you first come into the industry. You're going to be working on chairs, you're going to be working on the background assets and everything, but that's okay because that actually, once you actually work on a big title, then what ends up happening is you actually can use that to your advantage, and we know that people use that to actually get more business. So you have to also like get your staff ready to actually have enough in your portfolios, whether it's asset work or concept work, on some of the secondary level assets, right? If you're going to be trying to do like the God of War character, or like you're trying to do like Ellie from like Last of Us, I mean, that's great for your individual artists and their skill set. You're literally, it's probably not going to move the needle in terms of like the Sony PlayStation partners. They're going to be like, okay, that's great, but I want to know how your environments are. What are your actual vegetation look like? What are all these like secondary asset components look like in your portfolio? That's what we're actually looking at in order to kind of like do an evaluation. Because we're trying to see, being able to, like, if I can see you doing a really good job there, and also experience is a big deal, then we're trying to project it into the actual work environment. The second thing I'll just mention to answer is, this one's a little bit harder to answer. It goes beyond the portfolio. It goes into how is your art production like talent go. What I mean by that is, in Sony, the ecosystem when we actually work, as you can tell, we have games that come out every 3 or 4 years, and they seem like long cycles, but the art production process is very intense, and the milestones are very short. So being able to not only create art, but create art in a rapid format, to be able to actually meet these milestones is critically important. So having your artists train, or having people on your production team that understand Agile or Scrum or certain methodologies to actually like do the art very quickly is going to be critically important. And again, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but it's like the artists themselves, they might want to kind of like, you know, they want to show off their skill set, which is great, and there's an opportunity for that, but it's really rapid art development that we're looking for. The studios that actually do a really good job in the Sony ecosystem do it very well, very quickly, and the same quality repetitively. That's when they get actually more and more contracts. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Any last questions? Excellent. Well, I can wrap up a little bit early. What I'll do is I'm available. I'm here for the whole week. please come track me down. I'm not really good with the LATAM Games Conference portal. I will try my best. But if you do grab a hold of me, mention this talk and reference this talk, because this is very important for me. So I need to know that you actually came, understood, and have questions based on the talk, and talk about InfoSec security. I'm happy to talk about portfolio, art, everything else, but I want to talk to you about your security requirements. So please grab me. I have business cards. I'm happy to give them to you. Happy to follow up with you after the conference as well to get you started in the process and help you kind of like onboard if AAA game outsourcing is what you want to do. So I want to thank everybody for listening to my talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You can. Yes. Oh. Now I will use. I need to change because I'll speak Portuguese. Agora sim, hein? Agora sim. Estamos todos aqui no canal 3 para ouvirmos em português do Brasil. Bom, eu vou usar o púlpito agora para mim, não é painel não, mas eu quero conversar com vocês o seguinte. Como vocês já sabem, essa é a primeira edição da Gamescom Latam. Ela é uma junção da Gamescom com o Big Festival, um dos maiores festivais de games, né, o maior da América Latina. Então, para trazer aqui para vocês um pouquinho da história da Gamescom, sabe? Esse é um evento gigantesco que conquistou o mundo todo e agora começa a escrever um novo capítulo, só que aqui no Brasil. Então, vou contar para vocês que a Gamescom teve sua primeira edição em 2009, lá na Alemanha. E aí, mais especificamente, na verdade, na cidade de Colônia. E aí, desde então, a feira acontece anualmente. Anualmente no mês de agosto por lá, tá? Nesse primeiro ano lá de 2009, a Gamescom recebeu cerca de 230 mil pessoas. Ou seja, já foi sucesso, né? Logo de cara, desde a estreia. O evento é como uma plataforma que reúne varejistas, publishers e mídia especializada para saber o que os desenvolvedores estão fazendo. E claro que é um evento também aberto ao público, né, que tem centenas aí de opções de interações, entretenimento, diversão e informação para vivenciar, com os painéis, os estandes e tudo que está disponível em cada uma das Gamescom. E aí, além das novidades do mercado e dicas, né, para facilitar a vida de quem trabalha na área, a Gamescom é marcada pelos muitos jogos inéditos, né, que surgem aí em anúncios, trailers ou até mesmo em pequenas demonstrações de gameplay. E até já vou deixar aqui o spoiler para vocês que mais tarde nós temos o countdown com ninguém mais, ninguém menos do que Thiago Leifert, já que amanhã nós abrimos o evento para o público e vai ter gameplay, mostra de trailer, tudo isso para vocês, tá bom? Mas continuando aqui a nossa história, então, desde 2009, os números lá na Europa, né, nessa edição da Alemanha, nunca mais pararam de crescer. Então, ano passado, por exemplo, foram mais de 320 mil pessoas de mais de 100 países diferentes. Isso sem falar nos 180 milhões de visualizações do conteúdo que foi para o streaming, o pessoal assistir de casa. Tá vendo? A Gamescom tem muita história. Começou então lá em 2009 e agora faz a sua primeira edição aqui no Brasil. E você que está aí assistindo, que está ouvindo, faz parte de tudo isso também. Gostaram? Gostaram? Bate uma palminha assim para mim, ó. Assim, ó. Olha. Tem uns gatinhos pingados aqui me ouvindo. Ah, obrigada, obrigada. É isso, gente. Eu espero que vocês estejam aí curtindo, então, esses primeiros momentos da Gamescom Latam 2024. Lembrem de checar a programação aqui do palco 1, 2 e 3, para você saber, né, ficar por dentro de tudo que está acontecendo. Tem essa programação completa lá no site oficial do evento, é latam.gamescom.global. E aí a nossa apresentação vai analisar as principais fontes de financiamento para os estúdios de games, pensando em qual opção é a mais adequada para cada caso. E ainda aí vai explicar como você pode garantir o seu funding. Então eu vou pedir, antes de chamar o nosso painelista, eu vou pedir para o pessoal retirar o púlpito, que se eu não me engano, não querem o púlpito mais. Então, tchau pro púlpito. Olha aí. Olha o nosso querido. Palma pra ele. Palma. Cadê minhas palmas? Olha lá. Eu gosto de palma, entendeu? Eu gosto, porque dá uma energia a palma. A gente está aqui no nosso dia exclusivo de Gamescom. Toda essa história sendo feita, você fazendo parte dela. Tem muito mais, tem mais de 110 horas de conteúdo aí preparados para vocês nos próximos 4 dias. Mas então, sem mais delongas, por favor, vamos bater palmas então para a nossa apresentação, que será em inglês, tá? Do Bob Werther. Por favor, Bob. Vem cá, Bob. Bob, não seja tímido. Vem aqui comigo. Mudando agora para o inglês, então, né? Se quiser, né? Acompanhar em inglês. Hi, Bobby. How are you?
Hello, doing all right, thank you.
Okay, so the stage is yours. You need this? Great. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, hello, everyone. Hello. Presentation doesn't seem to be live. Okay.
Eu pego com você.
Okay, the different funding sources and the pros and cons is what I'm talking about today. I'll keep looking back here because my screen isn't actually showing me the presentation, and you can probably do better if I'm on the side as well. So very briefly, what am I talking about today? I'll talk about what I'm talking about first. Then I'll talk about who is this guy that's talking at you. Then the pros and cons by different funding sources. And what is Nocturne Games? I'm a partner at Nocturne Games. You might say this presentation is slightly biased. And how to secure the best funding source. So most studios require external funding, right? It's no secret. And this 20-minute talk is going to look into the major funding sources that are available to studios, the pros and cons of those, what's the best fit for you, and how to secure that. So first of all, who is this guy, right? I've been in games since 2009. I started off as a QA tester at PlayStation. My first game was Heavy Rain Beyond Two Souls. No, Heavy Rain, the Origami Killer is what it was called. And then I moved to Sega, where I stayed for just over 10 years. Covered quite a few different disciplines like production, corporate development, business development, game scouting. And then I moved to Curve, where I was heading up the kind of game scouting effort. And then last year I set up Kando Factory, and as of this year, while Kando's kind of going on in the background, I'm now a partner at Nocturne Games. And we'll talk more about Nocturne Games in a bit. So the pros and cons by funding sources, right? So there's like 4 major buckets, I would say. You can go to a publisher. You can go to an investor. That's going to be like equity-based. You could self-fund the game, just like bootstrap it. Or maybe you can get like government support, depending on where you're based. So like major pros and cons of these. So if you go to a publisher, they're not just going to fund your game, right? They're going to add value beyond the funding, you know, providing QA, localization, marketing, all those bits that are really, really helpful in getting your game out to the market successfully. On top of that, they've got access to distribution channels. You could even do like cross-IP collaboration stuff. Like when I was at Sega, we signed 2 Point Hospital, and when you're playing the game, there's like an arcade cabinet of Sonic inside the game. You know, maybe you could do like bundles across different games of the portfolio that publisher has. All of this is really additive to the game. On the flip side, they do tend to have really high revenue share demands, and they can, not often, but in very small minority cases, they can kind of interfere with the creative vision. Like, you know, they'll stop payments of milestones if they don't see that what you're delivering is in accordance to what they want sometimes. And they take a lot of IP rights. Like, you know, any prequels, sequels, spin-offs of that IP that they fund, quite often they have first right of refusal to. Sometimes they even have last matching rights on top. Some publishers go even further, and they're like, anything you create beyond this point, you have to pitch it to us first. So that's like really predatory. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So, you know, because they've got this portfolio approach, they tend to, you know, kind of grab quite a lot from the game, right? You could go to investors.
So this is like an equity play. So they're not taking rev share, but they're taking equity. You tend to have a high degree of freedom in terms of what game you create. If they help fund the publishing portion as well, you've got a lot of freedom and control on that side, which is quite different to going to a publisher. And they've got a vested interest in the long-term success of your company, which is really great, right? Because they want you to be succeeding 5, 10 years from that initial point of investment. So all of those are great things, but on the flip side, actually it's quite hard to get equity investors in your studio if you're a startup, A. And if you're making a PC console premium game, there's not really an exit story for them, so it's really hard to attract VCs for that kind of model. So this kind of play really works for a free-to-play game or a mobile game or, you know, God forbid, like a Web3 NFT metaverse thing, right? Like, so it doesn't really apply to most PC console studios. And there's like really infrequent rounds of investment that you can seek from them. So once they've invested, if you're going to go back to get more money, you can find that really, really tricky. And there's very little support beyond the money, right? So they'll provide the funding. They might help you with long-term kind of strategic planning of your business. They might help with biz dev, opening a few doors, but they're not as hands-on at all as a publisher. So there's very little you can expect, really, beyond that funding. You could self-fund. And you know what the advantages and disadvantages of this are, so I won't go into detail of this. But you know, it's quite hard to bootstrap, right? Like, bootstrapping a game, not just to develop the game, but also to publish the game, you know, the funding to market it, build a community, QA, localization, all of that costs money. So it's like, it's really, really hard, you know, from a financial perspective to bootstrap and self-publish. You can get government support. There's some great stuff happening around the world. And generally speaking, the funding you can get through government support is the best deal. Like, if it's a loan from the government, it's probably a better interest rate than a loan from a bank, right? If it's a grant, I mean, that's free money, so that's fantastic. And if it's like they give you office space at a really reduced rate, all of these things are super helpful. The problem with government support stuff is usually it's quite timing specific in terms of when you can apply for it. It's also quite timing specific in terms of when you actually get that benefit. Sometimes it takes a year or even a year and a half before you see the benefit of that support from the government, especially if it's like a tax credit kind of system. And it depends where you're based, so it's really location specific. So if you're not in the right jurisdiction, you just can't get it, right? And it usually only part funds your effort. It never really fully funds the effort of creating a commercial game. And there's very little support. Generally speaking, usually a grant or loan, you know, it doesn't come with other kind of bits that a publisher might provide. So let's just focus on publisher and investors for a minute. It would be great if there was like a middle ground between these two where you get the funding, you get all of that hands-on support in terms of publishing the game, you get that freedom, creative freedom in terms of what game you make, you also get the control and knowledge and skill set being built within your team to publish the game. That would be great. And if it was rev share based rather than equity based, that would be amazing, right? If there was a middle ground, it would be cool. So before we like dig into the middle ground, if we like just segment, okay, what does a publisher look for? And what typically does that look like? Versus what does an investor look for, right? So publishers are looking at project financing. So they typically care about like the USP of the game. They care about whether your game fits their portfolio. Whereas an investor's kind of looking at it from an equity perspective. So they're kind of thinking, is there an exit story here? Is this business going to scale up, right? Is there a really strong vision for the company that they can buy into and as founders that they really believe in? So their kind of lenses are very, very different. And in terms of the terms and the ownership that they look for, you know, what do they get in exchange for the investment that they provide? Publishers can take anywhere between, you know, like this is just how long is a piece of string, but it could be like a 15% rev share or 70% rev share that they take from the game. And usually this really is dependent on how much money they're injecting into the game. So the lower their investment in terms of funding, the lower the rev share that they can justifiably take from the game, right? So there's like publishers out there today who literally don't fund the game, but they'll help with the marketing and they'll help with biz dev. And in exchange, they'll take like 15%, right? And you have publishers out there who will invest millions into a game in terms of the both development and publishing effort, but they'll take the lion's share of the revenue, like even up to 70%, right? And usually the most common sort of indie publishing deals that are out there are probably a situation where they invest up to $1 million, maybe somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million, and they'll fully recoup first. So they'll recoup all of their investment first. You don't get a penny while they're recouping. And then once they recoup, it goes 50-50. So that's like the most common, typical indie deal that's happening at the moment. And when we look at what investors do, they take about 10 to 25% of the shares of your company. So that's like permanent. It's not just for the game that you're talking about that you're already getting funding for, but they're permanently becoming a shareholder of your company. They might even have some kind of voting rights sometimes. And they might try and really kind of shape the direction of the company in their best interest and yours to some degree. The real danger here is that it's a real permanent deal, right? Like if that relationship breaks down, it's really hard to kind of back out of that relationship. So it comes with really kind of serious risks attached to it. If you really should know who your investor is before you give away shares of your company, basically, right? And if we look at the bottom row in terms of like the duration of engagement, like if you work with a publisher and you've got a year left to release your game, then you're engaging for about a year. And then you release a game, and let's say the game sells for 2 years. During that period, you'll have an ongoing relationship. So it's like, quite a short-term relationship. It's just for the project. And beyond that project, if you have a successful relationship, you might do another contract and continue to have a relationship, but it's on a per-project basis. Whereas with an investor, for that exit story to actually happen, they're looking 5 years ahead, maybe even 10 years ahead, maybe even beyond 10 years, right? That's not uncommon. So it's a really long-term relationship. So like if I was to try and color code this, and this is the biased slide, by the way. If I was trying to color code it and show like where I see publishers doing really, really well and where I see investors doing really, really well, like if I was a studio and I was getting that funding, it might look a bit like this. Like in terms of funding, I mean, money's money, that's great. Big green tick, generally speaking. But in terms of fairness, I feel like some publishers take too much rev share and too much control. And in terms of investors, I think it's probably fair, like the value that they place on your company at the time of your company, and so the shares that they receive off the back of the funding they provide, that is quite fair, generally speaking. But, it's not really applicable to most PC console studios anyway, so it's like, actually, is it even relevant for your studio, right? I won't go line by line on all of this, but like Nocturne Games is the middle ground. So we've designed Nocturne Games to be that kind of perfect sort of funding partner for a studio that's making an indie game, PC console, premium games. Then, we'd be really interested to invest. And we have really fair terms. You get a lot of control in terms of creative vision. You get to build an infrastructure of publishing within your studio. And, like we have a really extensive network within the industry, like really wide and deep network within the industry. So we can bring a lot of firepower to the table, while actually you get to keep a lot of control within your studio. And it's rev share based. So it's not that kind of scary, oh my God, I'm giving shares away to this company sort of situation. So what is Nocturne Games? It's a rev share based investment vehicle that provides publishing support. And what we do is we try and power studios to become really self-sufficient, independent companies that can sustain itself and react to the market themselves, rather than being dependent on an external party, i.e. a publisher or an investor, to keep saving them after their funds deplete, right? It should be that you can build a sustainable business if we have a really successful relationship. And here's a slide that like really kind of breaks down what we do. I've tried to highlight what we're about. And on the right-hand side, there's a few kind of like really cool indie developers that I love and respect who've said lots of cool stuff about what we're building at Nocturne Games. So a few testimonials on the right. But yeah, it's a rev share based funding vehicle that has a hands-on approach without taking control. When I say hands-on approach, I mean we look to add value to the publishing effort that the studio has to kind of engage with as they kind of approach release and beyond. And this is our rev share model. So we share from the very first unit sold. So whatever capital that we invest, from day one, the first dollar that the game kind of generates, we'll share 70-30, where Nocturne receives 70%, the studio gets 30%. Once we recoup, it becomes 50-50. It remains 50-50 until we achieve 5x of our investment into the game. And once we've achieved 50-50, it flips and the studio gets 70%, and then we take 30%. The kind of deal, I think, is best in class in the industry, especially considering the amount of money that we're injecting into games. We take no IP rights over the sequels, prequels, spin-offs. We don't take any equity in the company. There's no strings attached, basically. There's no real traps. There's a lot of traps quite often with long contracts that you might receive from people, whereas our one is like really, really simple to read, short term sheet, 2 pages long, and our long form is like under 10 pages. So it's a really cool model. It's what I believe. Obviously, that's why I'm doing it, right? And what we offer is like that kind of like, we try to model it to make sure, how can we make it like a dream scenario for indie studios that are embarking on this journey on making their PC console game? Like, how much support would they require, and how much support could we provide? So from the very outset, we look to really add value to what the studio's doing. We'll validate the plans. We'll make sure there's like really good sort of hiring plans in place to build that infrastructure in-house. When I say infrastructure, I mean like, community building, marketing, the publishing side. We'll make sure that there's a really viable marketing plan and that there's proper sort of financing happening, not only to develop the game, to create the best version of that game, but also to make sure that you're able to publish the game and generate hype and momentum and own that relationship with your community, right? So how do you secure the best funding source available? It's basically you go to our website. If you can apply to us via this link, that would be great. And if you want to use the QR code and hit me up on LinkedIn, if there's any questions that you have about what I've talked about today, you can DM me on LinkedIn. Also, on that page, the apply page, it outlines what kind of games gets us really excited, what our evaluation process is, and how to go about submitting your game to us. So it should be quite informative. That's it from me today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question for you. Every time we have a panel here, you can use the QR code to send us a question. Bobby, I have one for you, so I'll ask. So what do you recommend for studios that are not located in the major hubs and depend on international travel to network and get access to talent, funding, and mentorship?
Okay, that's quite a big question. So there's a lot of online events that you can go to, like conference equivalent stuff, that are digital only that you can attend. There's a great website, a resource that you can use called gameconferenceguide.com. I think it's gameconfguide.com. So if you go to that website, you'll be able to see what events are happening around the world, what are the physical ones, what are the hybrid ones, what are the digital ones. So look out for the digital ones, and it also lists a ticket price for you to engage with that event. So you know, like, okay, that's how much I need to commit to be a part of the event. And that way you'll be able to network wherever you're based in the world, because it's a digital-only event that you're engaging with. And in terms of mentorship and support, so I think it totally depends, right? Like where you're based. But if you're in a jurisdiction that there is a really cool trade body that supports that area, obviously you should go there. That should be your first port of call. But otherwise, I would say network, right? Like try and build relationships with people and take every opportunity that you engage with someone that like you meet through an event or something to see like if you can get any feedback or any support beyond that initial engagement. And if they can't do that themselves, maybe you can ask them, do you know anyone who would be able to provide that to you? And generate your own sort of like network of people that you can call upon.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. So, round of applause. Thank you, Bobby. You can. É isso. Então, dando sequência aqui. Ah, ok. I'm sorry. Wait. I'm sorry. I will speak English too. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't warn everybody that I'm back. You know, I'm heading back to Portuguese. E aí eu deixei todo mundo maluco. Mas é para eu também captar essa mensagem de sempre fazer isso, porque ajuda a gente a estar sempre na mesma página. Eu, você aí assistindo, o cara do som e todo mundo, entendeu? Então vamos lá, dando sequência, né, ao nosso Tudo sobre a Gamescom. Agora há pouquinho, antes desse painel, eu falei um pouco sobre a primeira Gamescom, que aconteceu lá em 2009, na Alemanha. E agora eu quero relembrá-los, né, falar um pouquinho mais, né, porque a gente vai mudar de continente. Então, depois de lá da Europa e tal, a gente foi para a Ásia. Então, para você saber que essa aqui é a primeira Gamescom Latam, mas a Gamescom tem muita história, tá? Começando lá em 2009 na Alemanha, mas aí na Ásia, a primeira vez que aconteceu, que chegou por lá, foi em outubro de 2020, na Singapura. E aí foi outro sucesso absoluto e imediato, porque o evento logo foi confirmado no ano seguinte. Então, assim, teve o primeiro ano e no ano seguinte já estava confirmado e está acontecendo até hoje. Então, mais um local onde a Gamescom nasceu e continua aí direto, até caso você queira ir lá em algum momento desses, tá? Então, além das multi-opções de negócios e entretenimento da feira, a edição de 2023 inovou ao apresentar 2 shows online, chamados de Prime Time e Studio. E aí, o tamanho do sucesso da Gamescom Ásia se deve também muito ao crescimento do ecossistema gamer em Singapura e de toda, né, a estrutura que o local oferece para quem é dessa área. Então, Singapura tem sido um local de bastante destaque nesse sentido do crescimento desse meio, e a Gamescom vem, então, neste caminho junto, né? A Gamescom Ásia, então, virou, inclusive, um dos maiores e mais badalados eventos do país. E aí, para quem está considerando dar uma visitinha aí na versão asiática, o evento acontece em outubro. Então, desde a primeira edição acontece em outubro, continua acontecendo sempre nesse mês. Então, ainda dá tempo de garantir a sua passagem, tá? Faltam alguns meses. Então, tá tudo certo. Essa é mais um pouquinho da história da Gamescom. A gente está aqui celebrando a Gamescom Latam, a primeira edição do maior evento de games do mundo aqui na América Latina. Então, a gente já está, ó, a milhão, tá? Esse é o dia exclusivo, mas os próximos vai ter abertura do público. Então, lembra, mais tarde teremos um countdown com o Thiago Leifert, com trailer, com lançamento de jogos, mostrando gameplay, tudo isso para você acompanhar. E até lá, a gente vai tendo painéis com muitas informações, muito conhecimento para a gente aprender aqui juntos, tá? E o painel de agora vai abordar um tema cada vez mais necessário nos games e em toda a nossa sociedade, a acessibilidade. Tá? Então, para isso, eu vou convidar a todos para enviarem as suas perguntas mais uma vez. Vai ter o QR Code, tá? Então, aí, quando tiver o QR Code, você aponta a câmera do seu celular, manda a sua pergunta, porque no final a gente consegue fazer pro painelista, tá bom? Então, podem enviar daí as perguntas para o nosso convidado, que é o Matthew White, da White Thorn, tá? Então, basta apontar o celular lá para o QR Code, que vai estar no telão. Lembrando que o painel vai acontecer em inglês mais uma vez. Então, a gente pode dar aquela mudadinha para o inglês. Okay. We are in English now. Okay, so please welcome Matthew White. Yes, a round of applause. Thank you, Matthew. Oh, you can, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me okay. I understand this is live translated, so I will try my best to speak slowly for the sake of my translator and our lovely American Sign Language interpreter on my right. Today I'm here to talk to you. A little bit of fuzz there. Today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about accessibility in video games, how that relates to difficulty and approachability in games, and what you can do in your own life to make games a little bit more accessible day in, day out. So I think the most important thing to get out of the way right up front is what accessibility means. We talk about accessibility to remove barriers for people to be able to play your games. Now, unfortunately, that discourse sometimes gets wrapped up in difficulty. Is a game like Elden Ring that's tremendously difficult accessible? Is a game like Calico that we publish that's very easy inaccessible, and why? Difficulty is related, but is not really the core of what we think about when we think about accessibility. So, to begin with, we're a publisher, so what we primarily do is bring games to the world market. One of our primary pillars is accessibility and usability. Our goal is that everyone, everywhere, no matter their prior ability level, able-bodiedness, age, literacy, language spoken, are able to play our games. The way we do that is by removing barriers. Now, one might necessarily think in game design that we want to build barriers for players to knock down. So, for example, we want to build a giant wall to climb or an enemy to defeat. It might seem, therefore, a little bit at odds that we want to remove those barriers to make things more playable for our audience. I gave a talk a little bit earlier to the press about this, and I think one of the things that really came out in the questioning was that there's a difference between accessibility for traditional media and accessibility for video games. If we think about something like a painting that we all know, like the Mona Lisa or the waves over Fukuoka or one of those, every person is able to access those so long as they have healthy vision, right? That's really all that's required. But whether or not they're able to enjoy it is something altogether different. You might need to have knowledge of Impressionism, or perhaps you really just like the colors. That's taste, and that's really not the same thing as being able to access it, right? So this is the case with games. A great example is that if you today, who are presumably able-bodied and able to play games, lose your thumb in a cooking accident. Sounds silly, but it's something we could very easily have happen if you're working with a deli meat slicer or a lawnmower or anything. For the rest of your life, there's a new barrier here that the technology has to meet you at and overcome. It's not really your fault you cut your thumb off, presumably, but more importantly, the issue is that we've created a new barrier in the system. My background is psychology and education, and I come to games always thinking about the player as the first and most important participant in any game. I'm getting occasional static, so I apologize if you're hearing that as well. But regardless, we're trying to meet the players where they are, and that's really difficult because just like all of you in the audience, there's a diversity of language spoken, literacy level, age, background in gaming, and these are all really complicated things. We think about tutorials as a big part of onboarding folks, but we also consider ways that we can intervene to create physical barrier breakers for our players. In our games, these include things like high contrast modes, dyslexic fonts, support for hard of hearing and low hearing individuals, as well as ways to break cognitive difficulties. It's probably out of scope for me to give you the entire accessibility vertical here, but realistically what we as a publisher do is assign every single game that comes through the door an accessibility specialist that spends several years from the very beginning trying to look for issues that might present an accessibility problem down the line. Sometimes these are easy to spot. Something like there's way too much text on the screen for someone who has a cognitive problem. Or, for example, this requires holding 3 or 4 buttons simultaneously, and for people who might have like physical problems, that might be quite difficult. I think one of the ways that accessibility gets lost in the sauce in game development is often gamers react only 2 ways when they hear accessibility. They either believe that we're going to make their games easy and we're going to, ruin everything and it's going to ruin all the challenge and so forth, or they get a picture of a person with a pretty significant, profound disability that needs something like mechanical interventions to be able to move and so forth. So both of those things are certainly included in what we think of as accessibility, but an example that I like to bring forward is something as simple as color vision issues. Most gamers, at least in North America, still are male, by and large, male presenting. And 1 in 4 people assigned male at birth have a color issue. So I can virtually guarantee of the gentlemen in the audience, at least half of you have some problem with your color vision. All of those things count in my mind as disabilities. If you are a person who is nearsighted, wears glasses, most people don't have to pay to use their own eyeballs. So that by itself is something that we can help to overcome with assistive technologies like something as simple as, this audio is a bit strange, I'm sorry. Something as simple as a pair of glasses is an accessibility device if you think about it that way. So they don't necessarily need to be so profound. Get the meta glass, I say that. They don't need to necessarily be so profound as switches or the Xbox accessibility controller or these kinds of things that definitely are awesome, but really we need to think of accessibility as something that is for absolutely everybody. Even if you yourself consider yourself able-bodied, totally fine, no problem, there's no need when enjoying a video game to just be the man on the hill who won't accept help from his wife because you feel kind of emasculated, whatever. The help is there for you to use. One of the most interesting things we see nowadays, especially in bigger partners, Microsoft Flight Simulator and also Forza Horizon are two great examples. The workflow goes directly into the accessibility settings immediately. So before you ever have to consider, oh, am I giving myself a leg up? Am I taking the difficulty down? Really, the game just interrogates, how's your color vision? How's your reflex time? Do you have physical disabilities? Do you need louder or quieter sliders? Is the music going to create a cognitive problem while you're trying to listen to speech? And you don't really have to self-identify any of these things. They're just options that are available to you right at the very beginning of the game. This is what we try to do across our entire portfolio. And there are a whole host of things that you can do that are relatively low effort. And I'll show a short video toward the end here that I hope will work. But it should give you a series of things that you can take away. It features one of our upcoming games, Magical Delicacy, which you can play on the floor in the world area by the casual games, out on Xbox Game Pass in a few weeks, just putting that out there. But it is a lovely game. It's a cooking Metroidvania, but we've used it in several accessibility showcases this year, including Laura Kate Dale's and others. We do things that maybe, by and large, our games are very cozy and pretty easy, all things considered, and that's beside the accessibility discussion. It's just sort of our audience. But even in easier games, that accessibility piece is important. Many of you that are older, well, for video games, I mean like 30 plus, back in the 90s, remember that the settings menu was an integral part of how you played games. You didn't even look at the video game before you dove into that options menu. I need the volume lower, I need the text speed faster, and so forth. This is really all we're advocating for. So the pushback has always been quite strange to me. It's a bit like yelling at a wheelchair ramp. Like, it's not really for you, so just don't use it. That's fine. It's an odd kind of thing for me to have to fight. Sorry, I didn't mean to be political up here, but it's odd to have to fight for accessibility, I think, because it's something that literally just lets people live their damn lives. So anyway, the most important thing I think I can do for you now, because I want to save time for the questions, and I have 9 minutes and 30 seconds left, is I would really love to have this video show, and I really hope it does when I push the screen button.
Hi.
Damn! All right, I hope you have audio.
Usability and accessibility specialist at Whitethorn Games. I'm a woman with blue hair just past shoulder length, in a light pink t-shirt, and wearing glasses. Making your games more accessible is a great goal to have, but sometimes it can feel daunting as an indie dev. To help you get started, I've got a starter kit of some features you can include to help you reach your goals. One of the easiest ways to get started is to take a look at developer tools or options. A lot of times they can be great accessibility options. Commands that reset the player, or give the player increased health or stamina, or more time to defeat a puzzle, are all great ways to accommodate players who have reduced reaction time. By looking at the way you use your tools to test the game yourself, you can come up with surprising ways to help your players. Keep contrast in mind. This may sound rather simple, but checking how contrastive the player's view is may make the difference in making the game playable for someone with low vision or color blindness. Double check your inputs. Things like repetitive inputs and button holds can be limiting for the player. Offering alternatives such as eliminating the need for quick button presses or the ability to toggle a sustained button press is always a great idea, and if you can, try including input remapping. Including subtitles is another great way to make your game more inclusive, especially if your game has a lot of spoken dialogue. A lot of times you already have a script ready to go too. You can even go a step further and add subtitles for non-dialogue sounds in your game, such as environmental sounds or sounds that guide hearing players to act. Sometimes game objectives can be unclear. Instances where things are conveyed by color only or sound alone are often very inaccessible. try conveying information in multiple ways if you can. I hope those tips help you get started. Keep in mind, this is not an exhaustive list, but the good news is that there are loads of resources online from this amazing community. I recommend checking out the Games Accessibility Guidelines website, the Xbox Accessibility Guidelines, and the IGDA Games Accessibility SIG YouTube. Talking with other developers who are working on features to make their games more accessible is also one of the greatest resources we have. Our greatest strength is sharing the knowledge we gain with each other, because together we can make video games an even more inclusive space for everyone. Thank you.
That's Zoe, our accessibility specialist, who helps us make sure that all of the games that we provide are as inclusive and accessible as possible. The thing I want you to take away, if at all possible from this, is not that you need to spend $1 million to make your game perfectly workable for people with no vision. It's not that you need to reinvest or rethink your game that's very difficult. It's just recognizing the difference between a barrier that you intended to exist and a barrier that you unintentionally created by just not necessarily putting yourself in your audience's shoes. None of us are perfectly empathetic. We forget about our kids' birthdays, our friends' work anniversaries, and so forth all the time. So it's only natural that you're going to get stuck in your own head and see the world through the lens that you already have provided. So naturally, I'm going to think about issues of vision and color issues. I have a blue-yellow trait anomaly. I'm going to think about queer content because it reflects my background and my known life experience. But this is going to be different for everyone. So the really important thing is just to remember that every player comes along with a completely different set of abilities. A perfect example is everybody playing Elden Ring. I mean, Shadow of the Erd Tree is right over there. So Elden Ring is designed to be hard, right? I mean, hard is important. The most inaccessible part of Elden Ring, though, is that the only indicator that you're in combat is music changes. There's no other way to know. And if you just aren't playing with the music, you get killed completely out of nowhere. This is what I would call an unintentional barrier. And it's really those things that I want you to think about for the day. And if I can get rid of even one of those in your project, I'll feel very happy. I'm going to sit for 5 minutes of questions, and I finished 17 seconds early. So that's indie efficiency at work. How does questions work? Yes, I'd love it. You're right here in the front. To my translator team, how do I hear this person's question? The question was, how do we make a mechanic for a person who is completely blind, so no vision whatsoever? These are interesting topics. There are certain games that are completely blind accessible. So these are few and far between. I would call this one of the more profound accessibility challenges. So we'll often say that when we mean that it requires a substantial intervention and investment of time to make that game playable. There are a handful of games, possibly on demo. There was one in the IGFs this year that is literally an audio-only game. And some of my students during a Penn State time, back when I taught, did a cave exploration game that used 3D audio to navigate you through the cave itself. These are some interesting examples. I'm by no means myself an expert on this. Consider me more of an advocate. But we work with the Northwestern Pennsylvania, which is where we are, Association for the Blind. And they often bring us playtesters that are either legally blind, as in very, 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 very low vision, or completely functionally blind. So just speaking with the players is really the feedback that I think is most important. Whether that's accessibility or taste, it's just important to never kind of confuse those two things. Is this game not for me, or can I not even find out if this game is for me? That's always the key differential. Thank you. Cool question. I have a gentleman right here. I have 3 minutes and 16 seconds. This is an excellent question, and it's about more hard-to-notice disabilities and exceptionalities. So the question was essentially, how can we be mindful of content for individuals that are neurodivergent, autistic, or have a variety of cognitive impairments? We talk a little bit about this up here. It very much differs by individual and disease. Obviously, autism is a big, wide spectrum with a whole host of different abilities and disabilities. So I will say that no answer here is going to catch everyone. But there are certainly some very specific things. We think a lot about cognitive overload and cognitive load in games. Dr. Celia Hodent, formerly of Ubisoft, has an excellent entire book series on the cognitive load that surrounds using games. So generally speaking, when we think about cognitive disabilities like that, like processing disabilities, we try to just limit the amount of sequential information that's spat at a player. So in our game, Apico, it's a game about beekeeping. It looks a bit like Factorio, if you're familiar with that game. This is one of those games that is a menu simulator. You know, there's like 9 million menus on the screen, and you're kind of moving things between them. This can be very distracting for someone with, for example, attention deficit disorder or dyslexia. And so there's a focus mode in there that makes the single menu take up the whole screen and layers them in sequence. And that's one example of where we've made an intervention for specifically a cognitive disability. But there is a whole litany of things you can do to make your game more sensitive to information processing. And I would direct you to reading. I think that Xbox accessibility guidelines are really good. And I also think the Laura Kate Dale show and the entire accessibility SIG are really excellent for this. No one good answer, I'm sorry, but it's kind of a non-answer that I danced around. But there's a lot of ways to intervene there, I think, and it very much depends on the disability. I can likely take one more. Is that you? Excellent. Great question. So would we do an accessibility consultation on request? We have never done this historically, mostly because I don't know if you've seen the games industry lately, but running one business is hard enough. So that's definitely the big reason. But I will say that certainly just shoot me a line and I'll give you tips for free. It's fine. Just hop in our Discord. However, there are some excellent services that the consoles provide. I can't get into like super detail for a lot of obvious reasons. But if you're already working with the console, reach out to your rep. I know Xbox, for example, since I see a bunch of you in the audience, won't mind me giving them a little bit of applause here. They have an excellent accessibility service that they do a la carte for certain indie games, which is amazing and costs us nothing because even though I'm up here, I'm still broke. We're indies. So yeah, we don't want to spend too much money. But please drop me a line. That's it. I am at 10 seconds, so unless you're very quick, I think I'm done. I appreciate all your time. Please make accessible games. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. So, if you want to listen to the original sound, I will change to Portuguese now, okay? Então, agora eu tô de volta. Agora, para compartilhar mais um pouquinho, toda vez que eu entro aqui hoje é o primeiro dia, né, da Gamescom Latam. É um dia exclusivo, não está aberto ao público, então amanhã a gente faz a abertura oficial para o público. Por isso, mais tarde, teremos um countdown com o Thiago Leifert, trazendo tudo que vocês vão poder acompanhar, que o público vai poder acompanhar também aqui neste evento, além de trailers, pedacinhos de gameplay, anúncios, coisas muito bacanas para vocês perceberem que Gamescom Latam também é sobre novidades, sobre diversão, sobre entretenimento e muito conhecimento aqui também no nosso Palco Journey, ok? E cada vez que eu chego aqui, eu tenho trazido nesse primeiro dia um pouquinho da história da Gamescom. Então, relembrando lá da Gamescom em 2009, lá na Alemanha, e a gente foi para a Ásia em 2020, mostrando um pouquinho para vocês como é que foram as últimas edições também desses lugares, para ver como a Gamescom continua crescendo e crescendo. Então agora eu estou de volta exatamente para fazer isso, para falar mais sobre o nascimento, né, dessas Gamescoms, mas agora a Gamescom que mais nos importa, a Gamescom Latam. Então vamos falar aqui de Gamescom Latam, começando pelo Big Festival. O Big Festival, ele surgiu aqui mesmo, em São Paulo, em 2012. E lá, as suas primeiras edições rolaram no Museu de Imagem e Som. E ele já nasceu poderoso também, com o título de maior evento de games indies da América Latina. Aí a exposição que a gente teve desde o começo lá no Big Festival reuniu jogos inovadores para todo o mundo, atraindo tanto o público que já estava ali, né, para fazer negócios, quanto quem só queria ir lá para conhecer um pouquinho sobre esse universo gamer independente. Uma das maiores atrações que a gente tem no Big sempre foi a competição entre games independentes da América Latina. Nela, diversos games concorrem às mais variadas categorias. Algumas delas são escolhidas por um júri especializado, enquanto outras são abertas a voto popular. E para agora, 2024, o Big Festival se juntou à Gamescom e virou Gamescom Latam. Portanto, todos vão poder conferir a grande variedade de jogos indies que o Big traz para esse evento. Inclusive, nós temos uma área exclusiva para isso. E o mais importante, tá? A cerimônia de premiação vai acontecer aqui dentro da Gamescom. Na sexta-feira, tem uma parte dela que acontece, então a gente acompanha a primeira parte da cerimônia com a entrega dos prêmios para as categorias especializadas. E aí no domingo, o Big Festival anuncia os vencedores das categorias abertas à votação do público. Tudo aqui no nosso Palco Journey. Então se vocês quiserem ver, né, esses jogos da América Latina sendo premiados em várias categorias, estejam aqui sexta e domingo para essas diferentes categorias, tá? E para quem quiser votar nas categorias populares, é só acessar o QR Code do Big Festival, que está espalhado, tá? Por alguns locais do evento. Então vocês encontram esse QR Code, conhecem um pouquinho dos games, né? Que eles estão expostos. Tem até a área aqui, ó. A área Big Festival fica bem aqui na frente. Eu tô até vendo aqui um roxo bonito, um roxo meio rosado, né? Talvez eu goste de roxo. Então vocês podem ir lá conhecer um pouquinho dos jogos do Big Festival, votar e aí participar da premiação na sexta e no domingo, separadinhos então pelas categorias especializadas e categorias públicas, de voto público. E a gente tem então o prazer de acompanhar aqui no Palco Journey 2 agora, né, já trouxemos a história. Continuando agora os painéis, nós iremos acompanhar no Journey 2 um bate-papo sobre a PlayStation. Como que a PlayStation estimula o mercado de games independentes na América Latina. O painel vai ser em inglês, então já estou deixando aí avisado para quem quiser acompanhar o áudio no original, mudar para o canal 4. Lembrando que o canal 3 sempre estará em português e o canal 4 sempre estará em inglês. Então, se você quiser ouvir tudo em português, nós teremos tradução simultânea para os painéis em inglês e vice-versa, tá? Assim que funciona não só aqui para o nosso Palco Journey 2, mas também o 1 e o 3, tá bom? Então agora eu vou mudar para o inglês para a gente daqui a pouco chamar os nossos painelistas. Ok. So, please welcome Mike Foster and as a moderator, Daniel Monastero. Please, a round of applause. Thank you. You have your microphones. Oh, you can stay wherever you want, okay? The stage is yours. Okay, sure. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so I'm going to start. I'm Daniel Monastero. I've been a game development and a business person, and I did a few things. And I'm going to hear talking to Mike from PlayStation. It's a pleasure having you, Mike.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I'm Mike Foster. I'm a global account manager for PlayStation, working with our independent developers throughout the Americas. And it's been like 6 years or so since I've been to Big Festival, and I'm really excited to be back.
All right, so I want to start with the beginning because you were, I mean, you're the only PlayStation person when you started, coming to Brazil, visiting us, getting, meeting the developers. I want to know how it was for you starting that, coming to Brazil, meeting the first developers. When I made my first game, we already had a couple of games with PlayStation. And when we were able to launch for PlayStation, it was not something that was unheard, even for you, getting the dev kits and stuff. So thank you for that, and thank you for the developers that came before us. But I want to know more about how it started and how was the initial batch of games.
Absolutely. So, sorry, I got a little static. I first came to Brazil in 2007, going to SP Games in Porto Alegre. And we were coming down to see what the developer landscape was like in Brazil and throughout Latin America. And I was blown away by the amount of people developing and the passion and creativity that I was seeing from these developers. I knew from that very first visit in 2007 that I wanted to be involved. I wanted to help and support in any way I could. And I took that information back to the company and I said, let's do something down here. Let's help where we can. And it took a few years. I came back in 2008, 2009, and it was finally maybe 2012 that we really started bringing a lot of support, bringing in dev kits, supplying development hardware and SDK to these young publishers, and you know, support where we can to start seeing the market grow.
Yeah, and that was a great process to see it happening and to realize we could get, you know, our game published at PlayStation. And I want to talk a little bit about how that's process today. I think the current I'm not up to date anymore on that. I've been working on with people helping me with publishing. So I want you to you know, talk about the process of getting your game into PlayStation platforms right now. I think currently.
Sure. I know I've heard from several people that they feel maybe it's a challenge to find information and who to talk to about getting on PlayStation. We very much try to make it as an easy process for people and maybe just don't understand. So we have a website. You can go to playstation.register.net and sign up to become a licensed developer and publisher. You do need a registered company to do so. But once you're signed up, then you have access to our SDKs and our internal websites. And I think there are people that maybe have signed up and then don't know the next steps after that part. And I think maybe that's where some of the confusion lies. We have a very thorough kind of internal Wikipedia that anybody who registers, once you've registered and you've been accepted, you can look at that Wikipedia and it will answer like all of your questions. Okay, how do I get dev kits? How do I submit games? How do I go through the certification process? What are the best practices for getting my page up on PlayStation Network and creating web wish lists and these kind of things. The biggest challenge for Brazil and for Latin America in general is getting the hardware. And I know there was a talk earlier this morning regarding that. Taxes are just incredibly difficult to get around. And it also makes it difficult for us to deliver hardware directly to Brazil. We've had partners who have found ways around that. They they come to the U.S. And pick up hardware. They have a publishing partner that we can ship the hardware to their publishing partner in the U.S. and then they can come to the U.S. and pick that up, or the publishing partner can ship directly to Brazil. It's just more of a challenge if we have to ship directly, and I think that's a big stumbling block that we are trying to find solutions for right now.
And I can say the first time you open up DevNet and you can check out how to make PlayStation games, that should give you goosebumps. It was like, for me, it was like, oh, finally. Now I know how to make PlayStation games. Well, I don't know, but I can see behind the curtain a little bit. And for a developer that we're working on Windows and PC or mobile, whatever, when you get to a closed platform, and the amount of information you can learn about the platform and educate yourself, it's worth it. About the hardware only, at Abra Games, we help. I'm part of Abra Games, and I encourage all of you to, if you are in the position of, publishing a game and getting to PlayStation and stuff, Abra Games has, all the associates there that have been through the process, and that helped me a lot. I was talking earlier, like the people who came before me helped me share their experience with me. And when I met Mike, I was a little bit knowledgeable about what we're talking here today, which is very important. So think about it like you're not supposed to do this alone. right? That's why Gamescom exists, that's why Big Festival existed, and that's why Mike is here, and that's why Abra Game exists, for you to be part of it and be able to, share that information. So that's important. About the process you were saying, right? Like you get your game and you're putting the game to the platform. There's a few next steps also beside that, but I don't want you guys to worry about hardware before you have a good game that runs well on PC, right? And I think we should talk about a bit about the games, right? Because that's the make or break. You can't blame the platform for whatever happens after you launch, because you've been through certification, the game is valid for a PlayStation, but the audience will have to engage it. And there's a PlayStation audience, and there's a job you guys do there also, looking at the games and helping the games on marketing and giving them more opportunities, and checking also if it's a, you've been to the platform, but now we need, you to go get your game ready for this next step.
Yeah, I know Akupara gave a great talk a little bit earlier about pitching your games and what to expect from that. And, the reality is the game publishing business is very difficult. There are hundreds of games that are launching every year. And how do you stand out in that market? I know for PlayStation, what we're really looking to see is, we want you to have the most successful game you can have across all platforms. So we support, if you're launching on Steam, on Switch, on Xbox and PlayStation, it's great. We want you to have that wide audience and grow your audience. We think that's very important. But if you're looking for that extra support from PlayStation, then we're looking to see how are you making our console the best place to experience the game. How is it more immersive? Are you using the DualSense and the haptics and the speaker and everything with that? How are you, what's making this like really stand out as a PlayStation game? And that's when we're looking at hundreds of titles a year, those are the titles we can say, okay, let's focus and maybe support this one a little bit more, and this one, just give them extra, if it's a retweet of your own tweet, if it's getting featured in one of our promotions, our State of Play events or Indie Day events. It's really those titles that stand out and shine a little bit more and feel like they're bringing something special to PlayStation. Those are the ones that we can get behind more.
Are you still offering funding opportunities also?
We are, yes. And it definitely, again, it depends on what that game is doing to really feel like a PlayStation game or a next-gen game. And when I say next-gen, I don't mean in terms of like graphics visually. We can have retro-style games, and like the recently released Animal Well, which is kind of this amazing Metroidvania exploration thing, but they do something really unique and different in the game that makes it feel like it's an evolution of the genre. And so that's what I mean when we're really talking about next gen. It's more like next level. What are you doing to make it next level?
And being through the process where, we ported a lot of games to PlayStation, and we've been to the process where, talking to the publisher, right, kind of big games, and there was this point where, we were adapting to PlayStation's requirements as the porting company. With our experience, we're like, this is what PlayStation 5 game has, this is the haptics, we have to use this days and there because of your marketing, and then it's a mix of understanding that you're actually reaching a completely different audience, maybe the same audience as PC, but they sit down in the couch and they want to experience that. When I sit down to play video games, it's a different thing than on my computer. Like, I expect it to play as I'm playing a PlayStation 5 game. I have a PlayStation 5. I'm a fan of the platform. I play all my games here. And then the experience will go a long way for you getting your, not only attention, but the players will engage with you in a positive way because that's what they expect from you, which is great when you're working. And then going back to the whole process, when you start working with PlayStation, and any platform, by the way, it will raise your level. it will give you like an understanding of the video game industry in another level, which is beneficial to your game and the experience. But everybody forgets about the experience, right? We are
Yes.
Sometimes we're just focusing on the game and the idea and stuff, but there's an experience that is expected. And we were talking about experimenting, games that experiment and give you something from the culture or the people who made it. And I want to talk to you about your perspective about that, because you gave me an anecdote about capoeira.
I did,
and that's
yeah.
it's a good interesting point to talk about with them, because we want a vision, we want a voice, we want an identity, but that's not, take with a grain of salt, or at least knowledge, please.
Yeah, you know, I was very curious when I first started coming to Brazil and to other countries in Latin America. How could you bring the culture into the game? And I kind of posed that question, and immediately I was hit with a lot of proposals for capoeira game, because obviously it's very Brazilian. And I was having a conversation with Daniel earlier, and it's not so much that, it was make the game you want to make, but bring the flavor of Brazil, whether it's using samba music in the background, whether it's an artistic style that feels Brazilian. And he was mentioning game. I don't know if we can talk about it, the dog part.
Oh yeah, you can talk about it. They maybe are there in the audience.
Okay.
We can talk about it.
Well, he'd mentioned a game that was about saving a dog. And that's kind of the base concept of the game, is saving the dog. It happens to take place in a location in Brazil, and it brings in elements of Brazil that are very interesting. It's kind of the same way the Metro series. You know, it's a first-person shooter, and it's a first-person shooter first, and then you notice like the location and elements of the location that give it a flavor of like it's set there. But that's not the primary focus of the game. And I feel like the dog game is a great example. Yeah. I've also recently seen a first-person shooter that takes place in Argentina, and the first thing is it's a first-person shooter. The second thing is that it has all this Argentinian flavor around it. And I think that's what I really wanted to see. I didn't necessarily want to see a samba game or a capoeira game. I wanted to see how you infused any genre with Brazilian culture.
And also that means taking it in consideration, the experience you're bringing to your audience and what they're expecting from that. And think about it, players are going to be, you know, they will know about your PlayStation game all over the globe. We'll be able to release in all regions. And I always go back to a movie that I love, which is Encanto from Disney. People from Colombia have a lot to say about it. But I mean, it's a great movie with great characters, which has Colombian, heritage and culture. But first of all, and I have a daughter that's 4. She's like, we sing and dance to the songs. It's an amazing experience. It's from Colombia, has artistic style, but it's also, you know, a little bit accessible to everyone. You don't have to make a hardcore Colombian, you know, real deal. The Japanese have been doing this for so long. They have their games, their culture, and they export it. It doesn't have to be a real Japanese game in Akihabara, and that's very serious. It's a Japanese game. You see it, you know it. But I mean, it's not. You're playing Elden Ring. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I had that same kind of question. Like when you're right. When you see a game from Japan, you know it's a Japanese game, and there are American companies that try to
generalized a lot,
right? And they try to make a Japanese RPG, but even that type of game is now known as a JRPG, right? Because they started it and perfected it, and everything else is kind of that. But it's exactly. I was wondering if you saw a game from Brazil in any genre, would you know that's a Brazilian game? Was that was developed by, you know, a Brazilian artist or Brazilian musician or something like that?
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to stop when we're finish on time, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
So
wasn't even paying
and it's a
attention.
great point to stop, because again, it's a game. It's a game that you made.
Right.
And, again, it's the Japanese generalization, right? The artwork, the art style, the things, the JRPG, also in a gameplay situation. So, I mean, for you guys here to have questions, and you want to have questions, ask questions, please do so. But remember about the game. You're pitching a game, you're selling a game, and a game is an experience. We go way back to theory of fun. It's a fun experience that you want to, enjoy.
Exactly. All right. Oh,
Okay, you can repeat the question. So in this cycle, you know that the industry is in a low cycle right now. What would you recommend to all the indies in Latin America in order to just survive and thrive for the following cycle?
It's so difficult, the question, if everybody didn't hear it, I think you did. It was, how do you survive during this cycle? It's, we've seen over the past year a lot of layoffs in the industry, and the economy has changed post-COVID, and interest rates are up, and funding just isn't there. The VC has dried up. It's a tough question, and I don't know I really have a good answer. Just keep going, get your games out there. It's my understanding a lot of people are just trying to get stuff out in early access, so you can at least maybe monetize on the early access and to keep funds going as you continue to develop. I think it's really important to get that vertical slice and that playable demo in there, so people can really see what the full game is going to be at the end and really understand what it's going to be. And
also, as Jason was saying on his talk, on an online talk, do your marketing, build a community, get people to the numbers will help you if you have people that come here, love your game, talk about your game, and you can actually add that to the pitch, add that to contextualize what you're saying, because again, to get to the demo, there's a whole bunch of, videos and pitches and information. So, and also from my perspective, I think people sometimes just get scared and will pivot. I'll do mobile now. I'll just mobile. And then you have to start over with that. And it's also not a blue ocean. I think you have to plan and think about what you can do, but be careful of trying to make a demo game to pitch, and then you stop that to try to make money, and then you don't do anything. You're in the middle of the way. So it's scary times when you try to do. You have to consider, and then if you consider something else, it's going to be a long way. You can't try to fix it now. Nobody's fixing anything now, right? The industry is in a point where there is no solution. We don't know how to fix it. It's happening.
yeah, I mean, participate in the game jams, get something done, finish it, because while that might not be your end product, it could lead to inspiration to something that is really going to be amazing in the end.
Quem quiser perguntar, pode chegar aqui mais perto também, senão a gente vai...
Hello? How can we make games filled with Brazilian culture, samba, capoeira, other inert elements from Brazil, more attractive to North American and European publishers?
Are those elements, you're asking, are those elements more attractive?
Sorry?
You're asking if those elements are more attractive or of interest?
More exactly, I'm asking how can we make those elements, a game filled with those elements, more interesting for North American and European publishers?
Well, I think going back to what Daniel was saying, it's really about the experience. I mean, is the core experience really fun, interesting, and you can absolutely have those elements in there, and it could be a capoeira game. But is that core experience just really fun, and you can't just rely on that to be the sole interest piece. Like, oh, there hasn't been this type of game or that type of game. It's got if the game is good, there's going to be interest.
All right, thank you.
And I just want to say, like, is that thing important or interesting or complementary to the game? Do you enjoy it? Why are you doing this? Right? Do you enjoy capoeira and samba? You're engaged in that. I need to put that in my game. And you complement the experience. And that's what we're talking about. It's not trying to find it. If you don't know what it is, nobody will know. And it's the danger of missing the point.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can leave the mic. Yes. Thank you. You can go with it. Yeah. Okay. I'll switch to Portuguese now, okay? So if you want to follow along the original audio, but if you want to keep listening in English or Portuguese or whatever channel that you are in, okay, then you don't need to switch. I'm just letting everybody know. Aê. Até porque na hora que eu mudo aqui, a gente muda o áudio, muda o canal, tem várias coisas aqui acontecendo ao mesmo tempo, para que a gente possa fazer tudo isso acontecer e todo mundo ser ouvido no momento certo, tá bom? A gente está aqui na primeira edição da Gamescom Latam. Toda vez que eu apareço, como hoje é o primeiro dia, um dia exclusivo, nós estamos passando, né, para vocês toda a história do evento. Falei da união com o Big Festival e agora está faltando falar de uma das coisas principais, eu diria, que é o que está acontecendo, né, de bom aqui em 2024, tá? A gente sabe que é muita coisa, tá? Mas começando por hoje, nós teremos um countdown com a abertura do evento com o Thiago Leifert. E aí vai rolar vários trailers em primeira mão, entrevistas exclusivas e os principais destaques da feira serão mostrados nesse countdown. E aí, para quem curte jogar, saiba que temos mais de 250 estações para testar à vontade. Inclusive os 100 finalistas do Big Festival, tá? Os games do Panorama Brasil e os jogos das maiores publishers do mundo. Tudo aqui em um só lugar, na nossa Gamescom Latam 2024. E para quem busca informação, estaremos então com 5 palcos com palestras e painéis focados na indústria, além de outros 2 mais voltados para o entretenimento. E por que eu digo 5, né? Lembrando que os palcos, por exemplo, o Palco Journey está dividido em 3. O Palco Quest dividido em 2, formando 5 palcos no total. E no final de semana, eles se tornam 2 palcos gigantes, com muita coisa rolando por aqui, tá? Isso, e eu não tô nem falando ali, ó, da arena de esportes, tá? Que vai começar amanhã e aí não para até o domingo. Então, se você curte competitividade dos games, quer ver ali um mini campeonato, vai rolar bastante lá na nossa arena esportes, tá? Só que se você ainda tiver fôlego para mais atração, tá? No nosso próximo intervalo, entre aqui as palestras, que a gente já está quase encerrando, eu vou voltar para falar dos principais nomes que estão aqui na Gamescom Latam 2024. Então, cada vez que a gente entra aqui, é como intervalo comercial, mas ao invés de trazer os patrocinadores, que são bem importantes também para a Gamescom Latam acontecer, a gente conhece mais sobre a história aqui do nosso evento, tá? E aí você piscou e a gente já está no último painel do dia aqui no nosso Palco Journey 2. Só que não acabou, então calma que esse papo aqui é bom, vale a pena você ficar aí ainda, tá? E depois vai rolar, como eu disse, o countdown do evento com a apresentação do Thiago Leifert, com trailers inéditos e muitas entrevistas. Então fica por aqui para acompanhar tudo, tá? Então antes, a gente vai acompanhar agora a jornada do desenvolvimento da Saviorless em Cuba, entendendo quais foram as dificuldades e as oportunidades encontradas. E aí, para enviar a sua pergunta aos convidados, basta escanear o QR Code, que em algum momento ele aparece aí, você escaneia com a sua câmera, manda a sua pergunta e aí eu apareço aqui para fazer a pergunta para os painelistas. Lembrando que o painel vai ser em inglês, então eu estou mudando aqui já a minha chavinha para o inglês para eu poder chamar os nossos painelistas. Então vou fazer isso. Que até para nossa intérprete, então, os intérpretes estão fazendo um belíssimo trabalho, inclusive. Okay, so to talk about Saviorless, a Odisseia do Desenvolvimento Indie de Cuba, please welcome Jesus Fabre, David Darias e Josué Paglieri. Please, a round of applause. Yes. The stage is yours.
Hi. Okay.
Okay.
Obrigado. Gracias. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for being here.
So, we are here to talk about not any game, not any developer, but one very special developer and game that's Saviorless of Empty Head Games. And we have here Josué Paglieri and David Darias, who are the only two developers behind this project that lasted none less than 8 years to be completed and released. And the first thing is not, I want to ask you, is not about a game, it's not about the developer, it's about, hi, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me well? It's about a country, because this project has a particular thing. It comes from developers that are living in a country called Cuba, where not many games are released. And that's why, besides the fact that the game is really good, that's another reason why you're here, to talk about the reality of Cuba and being a game developer and releasing a game from Cuba. So I want to ask you, people listening to this panel, and can you raise your hand if you have been in Cuba? Can you raise your hand? I don't know. I hear some interference. I don't know if they are listening to me. Can you raise your hand if you are listening to me? Okay, thank you. And now, if you've been in Cuba, nobody. So there's the first information you needed to start your panel. So can you explain a little bit about what's the reality of Cuba and what's the context of Cuban developers nowadays?
Well, let's be fair. Cuba maybe is not the worst country in the world to try to make an individual game, but easily we're among the top 5. There's not condition, not in the past, not today, to develop an independent or not independent video game in Cuba. Just for you have an idea, until year 2000, cell phones and PC are mostly illegals, and internet just arrived to the country in 2018. Sorry. With that in mind, seeing any real capacity or possibility to develop a video game, even being short, is kind of super hard. In this experience and contest, the developers who tried this before us has mainly made a game only for the sake of it. I mean, there's no possibility of make profit. There's no possibility of make profit. There's no possibility of recognition or be signed for any full publisher or have distribution. Being said, this is like a, you know, we take a field that was almost empty before us, and we kind of full fight, but that take, 8 years for.
Yes, one of the things that I think that describes the best the Cuban development landscape is that there's no access to any financial system, to any digital financial system. And when you cut this tool, you literally have no access to selling the game online or on any platform. Where if you see Sony has under contract the need to access to these platforms to receive payment or to publish. So if you have a whole country disconnected completely from all the international payment system, Visa, MasterCard, or everything, there's no way for you to access a market or publish your game anywhere. So in this context, the amount of games that flourish within the island are games that are really underfunded, are governmental games that have a really, really small scale for schools, or you have people in the university doing really small games that get nowhere, and there's a bit of a freelance, there's a lot, in fact, of freelancers doing work for game development companies outside of Cuba, using a friend in another country as a proxy to log into these pages and work through them as freelance programmers especially. So that's the landscape, no? So one of the things that Saviorless, that we tried to accomplish with Saviorless, was to be the first game to break through that financial barrier and reach the international market in as many platforms as possible, no?
So you started this studio very early, like 8 years ago. When you decided to start this project, Empty Head, and this game, what was your reference? What was the games you looked like? I want to be like this. I want to. What was released there in Cuba? There was amateur games, like non-professional games, game jams. What was there at that time?
You mean in Cuba?
Yeah, in Cuba. Basically, what was the scenario in 2017?
Well, it's kind of hard to describe. You know, I started a gamer like in the 90s, but the days were almost not even consoles in Cuba, so it's kind of a rarity to have one. And you know, just few people could have console back the day. Later, after the 2000 years, I started the PCs. People could have, but never was something that many people have or are allowed. So that started like kind of pretty late. In our case, we have the luck that in 2016, for a brief time, was an open about Cuba and US relationships, and that made possible that a lot of Americans come to the island. But the day coming Innovadores Foundation, that was a startup based in Cincinnati, and they were very interested in our game. As a result, 2 months or 3 months previous to that, I go to New York and made for first time for a Cuban a crowdfunding campaign in Indiegogo, and was kind of a small success. We get funded in just 6 days, and after that, and Big Cuba hot topic by the day, we earned like a lot of press. I mean, like Polygon, Kotaku, Rolling Stone, a lot of big guys were pretty interested in our game, and that was great. But that don't last too much. In 2017, Trump come to power, and relationship between Cuba and US soared pretty bad. As a result, the embassy was closed in Havana. Innovadores Foundation that worked with us was expelled from the island for political purpose. There was no more fund or financial help for us. And on top of that, the former programmer of the project abandoned the project. So essentially, we lost all we have before, and we're in a pretty dark situation. Even to make things even worse, another indie studio from Portland took our name. That by the day was Savior, and all the marketing and all the stuff we already have done was kind of, you know, completely wiped out, and we have to rebrand our game as Saviorless. In that time, is when David arrived.
Yeah, in that time, like, given the context that we just described about game development in Cuba, when you see, oh, these guys spent 8 years doing the game, developing the game, you say, oh, they are probably very inefficient. But there's a small reality there that we spent the hardest part of the development was actually trying to find an international publisher that said yes to publish the first Cuban indie game, and supporting 2 guys in a country where there's, for example, no legal framework to enforce anything. So it's our relationship with the publisher, even we do have a contract, it's basically a contract of trust, because there's no way a French publisher, Dear Villiers, that signed us, could go to Cuba or open a case there, even find us. They don't even know where we live. So we were 2 guys speaking with the publisher, and in our room, we don't have an office, and getting a publisher to the point where they say, okay, we will support you, we will take your game and put it on all the consoles. That was the hardest part, and that took us 4 years to get to the point where we signed with a publisher. So of the 8 years, there were actually only 3 of them were the actual development of Saviorless. The first 4, we spent iterating on demos and making them even better, up to the point where the publisher said, okay, you have a product that is worthwhile the risk of going with a first-time development on a first-time country.
I would like to know what are the elements of the Cuban culture present in Saviorless, because I suppose being in a so close environment as Cuba, and not because you haven't traveled a lot, besides you going to the United States, and also being a game so, where you put so much of yourself, is your first game. I'm curious to know how a person that is not Cuban or a person that is Cuban can identify parts of the culture, of the Cuban culture.
I think mostly the influence of Cuba in Saviorless is conceptual. It's conceptual, sorry. It's a game that mostly is about control, and Cuba is a society based heavily on that, in a relationship of power between people and his government, people and the U.S. government, and the people of Cuba is kind of in the middle of that. It's a weird situation because mostly Cuban people are not like super political, but the concept is kind of force you to get into that, even if you don't like that. And I think in Savior, you could perceive some of that particularly in the story and the way the characters interact between them. Formally or visually, I think there are maybe conscious and unconscious elements that could talk about a culture, but essentially, I could not say that that is something kind of particular that you could.
Yes, and yes, but again, we go back to the financial structure around the game. For example, I would imagine that in Brazil, you could make a game very appealing to the Brazilian public and be successful just selling to the Brazilian country. And that's it. And you just made it with that. In Cuba, we don't have Cubans as a market because Cubans play all pirated games. Because yes, but they literally don't have access to the means to pay and when I say means, I don't actually mean the money, the card, the credit card, or the digital means to buy the game. So you have to be very careful where you put, how much effort you put to make a game that's representative of your culture, but appealing to the international market, because that was what we were aiming with the product. And it's a really hard balance because we are impregnated with the Cuban culture. We live there.
So after launching the game, this was the 2nd of April this year. How was the feeling when you imagine launching the game years ago compared to launching the game, actually launching the game on the 2nd of April? How was the evolution of the expectations on your end?
I think it's totally wild. For example, when we launched the game, we discovered that we never, not even one time, we seen in the audience, only in what kind of game we tried to make and accomplish. And then you discover all of a sudden that there is a marketing, that there is a lot of factors that influence heavily in not only in the quality of your game, but in the way people can access to it. For me, it's kind of hard because my background is visual artist, and that means that essentially my approach is kind of more romantic, but then you discover that you have to guarantee some sort of success in order to try to make, I don't know, a second game or something like that. It's difficult. You have to weigh the balance between what game you want to do, but also what game the people expect. And something I noticed in comparison to the past is that now developers have to be more aware of what people want. And that is kind of difficult, particularly for a visual artist vision, because it's art video game, kind of, but not as you have to sing all the time in the people who will, receive that. It's kind of difficult. I think you have to find a balance, and I think it's what we try to do, no?
Yeah, the happiest day for us, funny enough, was because when we started with the publisher, Dear Villagers, again, they made a huge bet on us. I wouldn't have done that bet if I were them. They made a huge bet on us. And first, they said, okay, you're making a beautiful 2D platformer, Saviorless, and this is a very good fit for Nintendo. And we were very happy that we managed to break through Steam and get to Nintendo. That was the dream, because we both played Nintendo when we were kids, and there's a huge barrier there where if you live in Cuba, you feel that's like reaching the moon. That's really far away, the idea of you programming or developing a game that goes into that console. And when we got approved for Nintendo, that was an amazing day. But we were expecting to launch a game that had a duration of 2 hours, but we got into it and we started increasing again the amount of content that was inside the game, and it got to 6 hours. And around that time, the publisher said, okay, I think it's a good idea to launch on PlayStation. And wow, that day was like, now it is like we are on PlayStation. No, we are on 2 consoles and Steam and all the rest of the platforms. And that day, that was the happiest day for us, because remember, the objective of Saviorless was to reach an international market. So at that moment where you got confirmation from Sony, from Nintendo, that your game will be there, and Steam and everything, that was an amazing day. Then the launch on April 2nd, it was a very stressful day, not as happy as the day when they approved us for the consoles, but we managed to do it, and it was satisfactory. There's few people. There's no one in Cuba with experience publishing in consoles. Like I'm probably I'm the only one, and I still don't have experience, so I wouldn't know what would be the effort needed to give to back up the launch of the game. It's just both of us sitting with really bad internet in front of the development laptop. That's a funny one. We developed the whole game with one Unity license, so we both work on the same laptop. Like every day in the afternoon, I called Josue. Josue, is it on your house or on mine? If it's in Josue's, I just went to Josue's with the laptop, opened the laptop, and we both sit there moving the mouse and clicking Unity. And if it was at my home, we did it. So the amazing part is that we managed to do it, and we managed to give support to the game on launch. It didn't have as many bugs as I thought it would. And the launch was a very stressful day. The happiest one definitely was when we managed to get a confirmation for publishing on PlayStation.
What is your future as game developers in Cuba?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one.
You know, right now we still have not working with receiving some of the feedback and seeing with this game that, as you know, take only 8 years to make. So we kind of relaxing right now, and here in gamescom also. But honestly, I like to work even in a more narrative and visual kind of game. I know this is kind of a hard sell today. You know better of me about that. But I feel that way. I really want to make a game that we could reduce a little all the amount of things we try to manage together in Saviorless, because you have to take in account one thing. At the point we start of developing Savior, now Saviorless, we don't know for sure, we don't even sure right now if we could make a second game. So essentially we made that thing that we want that everything was in this game, you know, like various genres, a lot of different assets. The whole game was made essentially by hand. Asset by asset was put by hand, each one of them. And of course, that took like a lot of time. We learned from that experience. Maybe it's not necessary go so deep in every single detail in a video game. So essentially, we learn from that experience, and we think we're right now capable of making a more concise and better game. But I'm only the artist and the creative guy. I have to talk with David, that's the programmer. He knows better.
I like to use a comparison just to express our situation right now. No, it's like when we started development Saviorless, it felt like going through the Amazon, like opening a new path just to reach to a place that we didn't know what to expect. No, now we reach the end of the path, and when we look back, we still see all the obstacles that we had to go through. Like we didn't remove all the obstacles. There's still a lack of internet in Cuba. There's still no access to financial means. So when we look back to take that road again, it's not that now it's easier for us because everything is solved, because we solved the problem of publishing internationally in Cuba. No, we still have to convince the publisher again. We still have to go through the lack of internet, through the constant blackouts, to the extremely intermittent and slow internet, and to go through the pain of the exaggerated need that Unity has for internet. And with that in mind, it's really hard to say, okay, let's go 4 years again and roll the dice, a very hard dice to get right all over again. So we're still going through the process of understanding what it means to publish a game internationally, and we're still deciding what to do next. Like, we literally don't know, because it's really hard to find, especially in Cuba, it's really hard to find people to support you in the development, to grow as a team, because there's no one with experience in animation in Cuba. There's no one with particular experience in programming for video games. There's no one with experience on doing audio for video games. So we had to learn everything ourselves, or teach the guys that do animation for movies or for cartoons. We had to teach them how to make animations for video games, and how to separate the frames, how to do everything. So it's really hard. It's really hard. So
you have a controller there?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh no. Let's.
So
I think we have like 3 minutes. Like.
No, we have 8 minutes.
Oh, we have.
Look.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, because I forgot to go through the presentation. These are the games. These are the games that the Cuban games. I mean, they're really small scale until Saviorless. No. This is Josue on 2017.
16, I think.
16.
That's Johan, the former programmer. But the days in Cuba, you don't have internet in the phone, so essentially you have to go to a park or to a hotel outside and try to connect yourself in internet.
Yeah. This was the coverage that got Savior. Remember, Savior was the game that another U.S. company took, and we had to rename it to Saviorless.
Yes, and that's the crowdfunding campaign in Indiegogo, and the amount of money we have, that was not really a huge amount or anything like that. It was only $30,000, but for us back the day was like,
yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. These are many of the demos of the game. The final game looks as pretty as all of that, but the gameplay is completely different. Everything is hand animated.
Yeah, this hand-drawn animation, we work almost like every cycle, I mean, like walking, running or something, have, I don't know, like 20, 23, 25 draw for animation. Even some deaths or something like that have, like, I don't know, 55 draws or something like that. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. These are the screenshots of the actual game. We put a lot of emphasis on the art. Josue handled everything there. This is the laptop. This is the one that built everything. Funny enough, when you build the whole game in that laptop, it turns out that it results on a very, very optimized game that you don't have to do anything to port to Switch or Steam Deck, sorry. So it turned out that was one bad thing and one very good thing. It was extremely well optimized, because the project didn't launch if it wasn't optimized on that laptop.
Yeah, that's the inspiration I told you. I'm a Super NES fan, and I grew up playing all these games from the 90s, and I've seen they're very present in one way or another in Saviorless today.
Yeah, Demon Crest, Another World, All of This World, and Edward Jim.
It's for Jim, yeah.
Groovy.
Yeah.
No.
The game, it's a crazy game because it has a beautiful 2D platforming, puzzle platforming game with Antar and a crazy rush timed like Sundered and Blasphemous style character. So it's a huge mix of two genres because we wanted to make everything like every novice game developer. We wanted to put everything in the game.
Lately we know this kind of hard, this enough mixed two genres, but here we are.
So that's basically the accomplishment. No, like we managed to put the game on Nintendo, PlayStation, Steam, Epic.
That again for you guys, I know that seems like signed by the publisher in Nintendo or PlayStation is a everyday thing, but for us it's kind of surreal, and for people developing games in Cuba, is if not a help in a factual way, unless a kind of inspiration or showing the possibility that even when things are like super hard, it still is possible to manage to finish a game. We hope that the people who come behind us don't take 8 years to get to this point, but anyway.
So that's it. That's us. That's us.
There is one last thing.
Yeah.
Remember when you made a move?
Yeah.
And then a video started?
Yeah.
Can you put that video?
Oh yeah, this is the trailer for the game. No, I think we have to ask we have to go to the first. Oh well, I can go back. No.
Go back?
No, I can't go back.
You cannot go back?
I think they are here.
Yeah, wait.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's the trailer.
So this video brings me to one of our last questions. You made 2 games into one. That was a funny thing when we talk about it. How you ended up creating in one product 2 games into one, and how it turned out in the end with the reception of the audience. How was that?
As I tell you, in the 90s, I was a huge fan of games like NDK, Edward Jim, Goemon series, a little later, Alice Madness Return, and I like a lot this mix of 2 gameplays together. I know that today this is not super popular because essentially it's more difficult at the time to sell to a player because it's not easy to, locate the game in one genre on another. That's kind of a shame because in the 90s there were a lot of games like that, and that almost completely disappeared today. And of course, have a cost in terms of audience, but at the end of the day, as I tell you, this is our first game. We don't know if maybe it will be the last. Let's hope not. And I really want to try to accomplish the game I all my life dreamed to make, and essentially that's it. It was like, I comply myself.
Yeah, you made the game you wanted to play.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
Groovy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well done. So I wanted to ask if somebody in the audience wants to make questions. We have a couple of minutes. Do you want or you have any question for Josue or David or both?
Yes. In Cuba, there's like one of the good things of Cuba is that everyone goes through every step of school. And on every year you have a course on English. So that gives you that almost everyone has a sense of communicating. And all the literature that, for example, programmers study on is in English. So if you find a programmer, it's really hard that he doesn't speak professional English. No, so that's why it's very common the freelance market for programmers. In terms of the artist, I don't know how common
Play video games have a lot. I play a lot of JRPG, so essentially it's an extra English learning, and I think that many people in Cuba also have more access, to digital media, movies, series, and things like that in recent years, and that helped a little in support to that class that David mentioned.
Yes.
Any other question? Last one? One? I think I'll need to pass the mic.
Hello. Okay. So I want to know if you guys resent in any way the path you got here. You would change something, or you're like very proud of what you accomplished in like being the first Indian Cuban game to be published. So like, that's one.
Yes, I understand. I think, yes. No, I don't think so. We are very happy that we made that what we did, and when you speak in Cuba about the video games, now Saviorless is an anchor that tells everyone that something like this is possible. So we are very happy about our accomplishments. We don't know if we want to do it again, not because of our previous experience, because we accomplished what we wanted, that was publish a game internationally. But what we did for us was a dream come true, basically, and being here is part of it.
If it was not the game that they wanted, we will be still waiting for many more years until it was ready. So that is a sign that for me it is the game they wanted to make, because if you're a perfectionist, you take the time that you need. That doesn't matter. Sometimes it's 8 years, sometimes it's 3.
Yeah, we don't have money, we don't have experience, but we have a lot of time to try to make the game we want.
Yeah, so if you already spent, let's say, 7 years, you say, okay, there is 1 year more. Nothing compares to the other 7 years, so it's worth it.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much for coming, and thanks a lot for your interest in this incredible game and in these incredible developers that came from Cuba. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mike, yeah. Muito obrigada. Vamos sair por ali. Olha só, o último painel, mas tem muito mais aqui para acontecer no nosso Palco Journey. Então, calma que eu tenho mais coisas aqui, inclusive, para contar para você, tá? Porque, para mim, é um prazer muito grande estar aqui com vocês nesse dia exclusivo. Tanta coisa legal já aconteceu e o evento ainda nem começou oficialmente, então imagina só a hora que começar com a presença do público todo por aqui. Eu prometi contar para vocês quem são os convidados especiais que vão passar por aqui. Então, vamos lá para a listinha, tá? Um deles é o David Alperti, CEO da Skybound Entertainment e produtor executivo das séries The Walking Dead e Invencível. E vai rolar uma conversa incrível com 2 dos co-criadores de Tibia, um dos games mais amados do mundo inteiro. A minha adolescência, Tibia era assim um jogo marcante realmente. Agora, já para quem acompanha aí o trabalho dos creators, os criadores de conteúdo, é esperado que mais de 1000 influenciadores estejam com a gente nesse ano. Entre eles, Guaxinim, Júlia Papilli, Augusto Ferrante, Velho Vamp, Sidão do Game, Royale e muitos outros mais. E é isso, gente. Convidem os seus parceiros de trabalho, amigos, família, porque a Gamescom Latam 2024 promete ser histórica. É a primeira edição, o maior evento de games do mundo, vem para a América Latina e vai marcar a nossa história. Eu espero o ano que vem, já estou pensando até lá, hein, da gente estar aqui de novo fazendo tudo isso. Então, Vem com a gente que hoje só está começando. Reforçando, tá? O nosso muito obrigada também aos apoiadores, patrocinadores e parceiros. Sem eles, nada disso seria possível. Então fica aqui o nosso agradecimento. E vou fazer esse agradecimento agora. Sob a chancela do Ministério da Cultura e da Lei de Incentivo à Cultura, a Gamescom Latam tem patrocínio do Banco do Brasil, da Sabesp e da TNT. Apoio da Essence, Boticário e Acer. Parceria B2B com a Abra Games, Associação Brasileira de Desenvolvedores de Jogos Digitais, através do projeto Brasil Games. Uma parceria com a Agência Brasileira de Promoção de Exportações e Investimentos, a Pax Brasil. Realização Omelete & Co, Qualmess, Gamescom Latam, SP Cine, Secretaria de Desenvolvimento Econômico e Trabalho da cidade de São Paulo, a Associação Paulista dos Amigos da Arte, Secretaria da Cultura, Economia e Indústrias Criativas de São Paulo, Lei Paulo Gustavo, Ministério da Cultura, Ministério do Desenvolvimento, Indústria, Comércio e Serviços e Governo Federal. Novos patrocinadores e apoiadores serão anunciados em breve. Então, eu não vou nem falar até amanhã não, porque daqui a pouco, no nosso Palco Journey e por todo o evento, faremos o countdown com a presença de Thiago Leifert, trazendo um pouco de tudo que vocês vão ver aqui na Gamescom, incluindo alguns gameplays, trailers e anúncios de games. Então não sai daí, que daqui a pouco a gente volta com o Thiago Leifert e o countdown da Gamescom Latam 2024. Obrigada! Bye!